Chapter 1297. Maltese Island, Valletta. Charlotte jumped down from the Kuan-Pung bomber. The Kuan-Pung bomber turned around and flew east. Super Xiaoqian emerged from Charlotte's multifunction watch, but found that she was still in the cockpit of the Kuan-Pung bomber. Only then did she realize that Charlotte had taken off his multifunction watch and placed it on the seat in the cockpit before jumping. She then activated the camera of the Kuan-Pung bomber, and Charlotte's figure suddenly appeared on one of the displays. He fell rapidly from the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. His figure looked very small in the sky, but she felt that he was incomparably majestic, strong enough to support the sky and the earth. "Goodbye, my master," Super Xiaoqian said. Tears rolled down from her eyes and splashed on the seat in the cockpit, but nothing was wet. Everything about her was virtual, but her emotions were real. The strong wind blew in the sky. Charlotte opened his arms and felt the wind passing through his armpits. It felt like he had grown wings and was flying in the blue sky and white clouds. The land became bigger and bigger in his sight. Charlotte had already seen the Cross Mountain in the east of Valletta and the Knight's Castle hidden in the valley. The holy palace of the Knights Hospitaller was in the Cross Mountain, and the Knight's Castle was the first stop. Charlotte had been here before, and he was familiar with everything here. It was also that time when he killed the leader of the Knights Hospitaller, Angilio. Now the leader of the Knights Hospitaller was the former puppet leader, Walton, and that guy had signed a verbal peace agreement with him. After that agreement, the Knights Hospitaller did not come to trouble him. This was not because the Knights Hospitaller kept their promise, but because they did not dare to provoke Charlotte at all. A man who dared to blow up the U.S. 7th Fleet and Area 51, did the small Knights Hospitaller have the courage and strength to go against him? The Knights Hospitaller regarded Cassius Ruiz's armor as a sacred relic, and regarded Cassius Ruiz as a horseman of the apocalypse who rode on a red horse and represented war. It was a good choice for Cassius Ruiz to set his headquarters in a place close to him, but the Knights Hospitaller probably did not know of his existence yet. Where in Malta was Cassius Ruiz's lair? Charlotte didn't know. He opened the parachute and controlled the parachute to descend into the valley where the Knight Castle was located. He had thought it through very clearly. Cassius Ruiz's nest was there, and he didn't need to investigate or search for it at all. All he needed to do was to appear here. As long as he was in Malta, Cassia, Ruiz, and Isotab would come here to look for him. The Knight's Castle came into sight. Before Charlotte landed on the ground, he was quickly discovered by the armed men of the Knights Hospitaller. The ancient bell on the bell tower rang, and a dozen armed men rushed out of the castle. A few of them were riding off-road motorcycles, while others were riding horses. Times had changed, and knights had to adapt to the changes of the times. Motorcycles were obviously better adapted to modern society than warhorses. When Charlotte landed on the ground, the dozens of hospital knights who rushed out of the castle had already surrounded him. More than a dozen black muzzles were aimed at Charlotte. However, Charlotte treated these tall and strong armed men like air. He slowly took off the parachute bag on his back, and then put the large equipment bag on his back. "Who are you?" one of the armed men shouted at Charlotte in Italian. Charlotte's lips curled into a smile, and he replied in Italian, "Charlotte." "Charlotte?" The armed man who asked the question was stunned for a moment, and then he suddenly laughed. "Damn, do you think you are Buffon? If you tell me your name, will I treat you to a cigarette? Or a drink?" "Ha ha!" The dozens of armed men laughed loudly. The leader of the armed men suddenly stopped laughing and roared fiercely, "Kneel down!" Charlotte didn't move, and then he said lightly, "Call Walton, he knows what to do. Also, if you are rude to me again, just one more time, and I will kill you." The leader of the armed men's mouth twitched, and just as he was about to flare up, another armed man beside him suddenly pulled his hand and said nervously, I remember who Charlotte is. He is the owner of the Rema Group." The dozens of armed men from the hospital knights were instantly stunned. Their eyes were originally filled with ridicule and contempt, but now they were filled with fear. It was normal for these armed men to not know who Charlotte was, but anyone who played with guns knew about the Rema Group. Many gunmen dreamed of owning a Gale assault rifle from the Rema Group, or an XL 2500 sniper rifle. This man was still wanted by the United States, and was regarded as the #1 enemy by the United States, but he was still alive. But what made these armed men afraid was that this man in front of them had learned from the Holy Palace, and had taken away the holy relic of the Hospital Knights. However, they were, after all, members of the Hospital Knights, and the power of faith could sometimes overcome fear. An armed man standing behind Charlotte quietly aimed the muzzle at Charlotte's vest, and the fingers of his right hand pressed on the trigger of the pistol. If they killed Charlotte and sent his body to the United States, maybe the United States would recognize the status of the Hospital Knights as a sovereign country in the world. Killing Charlotte could also be considered as revenge for the former commander, Angilio. You'd better not think that way. Charlotte seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. I will give you 1 second to put down the gun, or you will shoot. There was no gap in 1 second, and it passed in the blink of an eye, so fast that people had no time to think. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The gunman who fired the shot fell to the ground, and there was a bloody hole in his temple. Blood and brain matter flowed out of his brain, but until the moment of his death, he did not understand why he could not control his arm and shot himself. All of this happened and ended in a second. It was so fast that no one could believe it. You! The leader of the armed men's face was pale, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He subconsciously wanted to shoot, but he suddenly found that he could not control his fingers at all. Not only him, but all the armed men of the Hospital Knights were the same. They wanted to shoot, but they could not. Moreover, as the desire to shoot became stronger, a voice appeared in their minds, telling them to raise the muzzle, point it at their own heads, and then shoot. They did not know that their brain waves had been captured, and their thoughts were also controlled. More than a dozen of them surrounded Charlotte with their guns, and it seemed that they could shoot Charlotte at any time, but the reality was that Charlotte could kill them all with just a thought. However, Charlotte did not do this. He just said calmly, "Call Walton, he knows me, and he will know how to deal with this. I am not here to start a war. If I want to kill all of you, none of you will survive. As for your castle and the Holy Palace, if I want them, they will be turned into ruins." The leader of the armed men suddenly found that he could move his hand, but he did not dare to move recklessly. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. Charlotte said, "Call Walton, I do not want to say it a third time." The leader was still hesitating, but his hand had already reached into his pocket. His face was drained of all color, and his voice trembled. You don't kill me. I'll make a call. I'll make a phone call." "That's right." Charlotte looked around and said to the remaining armed men, "Put down the muzzle, or I can't guarantee that no one will accidentally fire and die." This sentence was like an order that could not be disobeyed, and everyone put down their guns. The leader of the armed forces quickly made a call. He briefly explained the situation and then passed the phone to Xiaolei. In a trembling voice, he said, "Sir, our regiment commander wants to speak to you, Charlotte took the phone and said, "Mr. Walton, long time no see. Mr. Xia, what do you want to do?" Walton's voice was full of panic and fear. "We have a prior agreement. Our holy relic is still in your hands. We have not come to ask for it, have we? Our Holy Virgin has been serving you, and we have not called her back. So, there is no reason for you to start a war with us." Charlotte said, "I am not here to start a war with you. I just came to Malta to meet someone. I want to stay in your castle for a few days. Is that okay?" No problem. Mr. Xia, please give the phone to my man, and I will ask him to arrange a place for you and the Holy Virgin," Walton said. "There is no need for the Holy Virgin. Also, I have to remind you that my visit this time is confidential. If you leak the news that I am in Malta to the Americans, I will use my bombers to erase you from the earth, Charlotte said. Mr. Xia, are you kidding me? I would not dare to do that, even if you gave me 10 gut. You even dared to blow up the 7th Fleet and Area 51. We are friends, not enemies. Walton's voice trembled. Thank you. After saying this, Charlotte handed the phone to the leader of the armed men. The leader of the armed men took out his cell phone and said a few words to Walton before hanging up. His attitude also took a 180-degree turn. His face was filled with a fawning smile. Mr. Xia, please follow me. Charlotte nodded. The leader of the armed men shouted to one of his men, What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and help Mr. Xia with his backpack. An armed man followed up to help Charlotte with his backpack, but Charlotte said, No, I will carry my own backpack. Just give me a motorcycle. The things in his equipment bag were too important, even related to his life and death. He would not let it leave his body. An armed man handed his off-road motorcycle to Charlotte, and Charlotte rode the motorcycle to the castle. Behind him, a group of armed men on horses and motorcycles followed closely. The smart man who wanted to sneak attack Charlotte was lying on the back seat of a motorcycle, and the bullet hole in his head was still bleeding and brain juice was still flowing. After entering the castle, the leader of the armed men arranged the best room in the castle for Charlotte. Mr. Xia, if you need anything, just tell me. Our commander said that no matter what you want, we will meet your needs. By the way, my name is Johnson. At the door, the leader of the armed men introduced himself with a flattering smile. Charlotte said, Just don't disturb me. Okay, Mr. Xia, what would you like to eat for dinner? Johnson said. Charlotte reached out and closed the door. Johnson's nose almost hit the door. He was stunned for a few seconds before he took a step back and turned to leave. Being treated like this, he did not have the courage to get angry. In fact, during the time he spent with Charlotte, the cold sweat on his back had not stopped. Charlotte opened the extra-large equipment bag and took out the silver armor, the crystal skull, and the box of the world. He put on the armor and put the crystal skull and the box of the world in a special bag. There were also parts for 2 guns in the bag, an XL 2500 sniper rifle and a Gale assault rifle. There were also hundreds of rounds of ammunition and a few high-explosive grenades. He was ready to fight. Would Cassia Ruiz come? Chapter 1298. In the evening, Johnson brought the 4 women to Charlotte's room. The 4 women were holding food in their hand. Some were steaks, some were fruits, and some were red wine. The 4 women were all very young and beautiful. Their figures were even better. They were tall and had long legs. Coupled with their breasts and hips, they could easily arouse men's desire. With delicious food and beautiful women, the Knights Hospitaller had obviously come to deliver food to Charlotte. The 4 women were the new generation of holy maidens of the Knights Hospitaller. They were Helena, Jennifer, Constantine, and Julia. The 4 holy maidens had blonde hair, red hair, black hair, and brown hair. When they walked together, their long hair swayed like a waterfall under the sun. They were as beautiful as Giovanna and the other 3, but they didn't have the visual effect of twin sisters. Don't be afraid. I heard he's very good to women, Johnson said as he walked. As Johnson walked, he said, the previous generation of saintesses lived very well with him. I heard that they are now multimillionaires. As long as you can please him, he might give you a large sum of money. Is he really the richest man in the world? The blonde Helena asked. Of course. It's said that his wealth is close to $1 trillion. Johnson said that one afternoon was enough for him to get some information from the internet and the Knights Hospitaller's intelligence network. Is he really a demon? The red-haired Jennifer asked. Giovanna and the others call him the Son of God, Johnson said. There's a saying in the Rescue Society that Charlotte has divine power and is the Son of God. They worship him like a god. So from the Rescue Society's point of view, he's not a demon. But we don't recognize the Rescue Society. Whether he's a demon or a son of God depends on your investigation. I'll know the answer after I touch his body, the black-haired Constantine said. I'm afraid you can't touch it. You have to blow on it, the brown-haired Julia said. Go to hell. You're shameless. The black-haired Constantine kicked Julia with her foot. But her action was not aggressive at all. It was gentle and playful. The four women talked and laughed as they followed Johnson to a room on the second floor. When they reached the door, they finally quieted down. When they came, they were very relaxed and full of imagination about the mysterious man. But now they were nervous, afraid to see him. Johnson was also very nervous. He took a deep breath and knocked on the door. Mr. Xia, I'm here to bring you dinner. Through the door came Charlotte's voice. He spoke fluent Italian. I have my own food, so I don't need your dinner. Take it back. Take it back. Johnson bit the bullet and said, Mr. Xia, this is the order of our commander. If we neglect you, we will be punished by the commander. Please, take it back. I don't need your food. I don't want to repeat myself a third time, Xiaolei said. Take it back. Take it back, I said. Xia, I said. I don, you. Helena walked to the door and said, Mr. Xia, if you don't accept our service, we will really be punished. Please accept our service for Giovanna's sake. Footsteps came from behind the door. A smile appeared on Johnson's face. He felt that the information was correct. Charlotte was good to women. Women were his weakness. The four women breathed a sigh of relief. The door opened. Johnson and the four women looked at Charlotte. At that moment, all five of them were stunned. Xiaolei, who had appeared at the door, was dressed in silver armor. He looked mighty and tall, like a crusader on an expedition to the east. This. Johnson pointed at the silver armor on Charlotte. His fingers were trembling, and so was his voice. Isn't this our holy relic? Xiaolei nodded. That's right, it's your holy relic. I took it from Angelio. It's mine now. Johnson felt as if 100 alpacas were running happily in his heart. All the words in his heart converged into one word. F***ck. Stealing the holy relic of the Knights of Hospital, and then wearing it in the outpost castle of the Knights of Hospital, was no different from slapping the faces of all the Knights of Hospital. What made Johnson want to vomit blood was that even if Charlotte slapped the Knights of Hospital in the face, the Knights of Hospital could not show any temper. Do you want to take it back? Charlotte looked at Johnson and asked. No. Johnson hurriedly shook his head. Mr. Xia, our commander made it very clear that you are our friend, not our enemy. As for the whereabouts of the holy relic, let the future generations solve it. Charlotte said, Bring it in. The four holy ladies entered the room in a line, but Johnson turned and left. The four holy ladies put the food and wine on the table, but they did not leave. They stood by the table and looked at Charlotte cautiously. Charlotte said, What are you still doing here? You have put the things down. You can go. However, the four holy ladies did not move. The red-haired Jennifer bit the bullet and said, Mr. Xia, we can't go. Charlotte took off his helmet and revealed an unhappy face. Mr. Xia, don't be angry. The black-haired Constantine said, We know Giovanna and the others. We often have tea and chat together in Italy. The brown-haired Julia also said, Yes, we are good friends with Giovanna and the others. Mr. Xia, please let us stay in your room for the sake of our friendship with Giovanna and the others. After a pause, she added, Well, Mr. Xia, if you want, you can do anything to us. Charlotte glanced at the empty milk bottles beside the bed and then at the four holy ladies' towering breasts. The desire to have a full meal suddenly emerged and overcame all other thoughts. Seeing Xiaolei looking at their breasts with feverish eyes, the four holy maidens suddenly became nervous, but they still maintained a calm expression on their faces. They had come to dedicate themselves. Charlotte was interested in them, which was actually a good thing for their mission. But after all, they were holy ladies, virgins who had not experienced the world. When they thought of that kind of thing, they could not help but feel nervous and shy. The four holy ladies were nervously waiting for Charlotte's next move, but they waited for a sentence that made them blush, and did not know what to do. "Then give me some milk." "I want to drink milk," said Charlotte. "Mr. Xia, we haven't had a child yet," Julia cautiously reminded Charlotte, for fear of making Charlotte unhappy. "Of course I have my ways. You just need to agree." Charlotte said, "If you agree you can stay. If you don't agree you can leave." The four holy ladies looked at each other and nodded at the same time. They had no other choice. This was the order of Commander Walton. As knights and the holy ladies of the Knights of the Hospital, they had a firm belief and the spirit of sacrificing themselves for the Knights of the Hospital. "It's good that you agree." Charlotte walked up. As he walked, his eyes quickly darkened, and the eyes of the four holy ladies standing in front of him lost their light. They became empty and lifeless. When the four holy ladies came back to their senses, it was already a few minutes later. They saw that Charlotte was still standing in front of them, but they did not say anything. "My breasts." Jennifer seemed to feel some strange changes in her body. She reached out and pinched her full and firm breasts. As a result, the silk cloth in front of her chest was soaked when she pinched it. Constantine's was even more exaggerated. She did not reach out to pinch, but a little white liquid emerged from the gap of the cloth at the highest point of her chest. Helena and Julia were in the same situation. In the blink of an eye, the white liquid had soaked the cloth in front of their chests, and the wet marks were constantly expanding. "Take a cup and squeeze it out yourself," Charlotte said. As soon as he said that, Helena suddenly bent her long legs and knelt in front of Charlotte. The other three women also knelt down, and then made the sign of the cross with their hands. They murmured, "Thank God, praise God, for giving us the opportunity to nurture the Son of God." Charlotte was a little speechless, but he did not interrupt their prayers. The four holy ladies finished praying and stood up from the ground. Each of them reached out and grabbed the lapels of their clothes, and then pulled them to the left and right. Whoosh! In that instant, a snow-white scenery appeared in front of Charlotte. It was of different shapes, different sizes, and the same undulations. It was extremely spectacular. However, what really tempted Charlotte was the white liquid. He was eager to get the energy contained in it. When he smelled that unique fragrance, the energy of the branding power in his body was already stirring. During his time in Xanadu, he had to drink the milk of Giovanna and the other three, as well as Akiko Tsukino every day. The milk of women who had not had children contained more powerful energy, but that kind of energy would weaken as he ate. In fact, when he left, the milk of Giovanna and the other three, as well as Akiko Tsukino, did not have much energy that he wanted. It was also during that period of time that he figured out the situation. The first milk produced by a woman who had been deeply hypnotized into a cow was the best. Every drop of milk contained rich energy and was very precious. And as he ate, the women who were deeply hypnotized by him and produced milk for him would gradually lose that kind of energy. Their bodies needed to rest for at least a few months to recover to the state of milk production that he wanted. This was actually a law of nature. Nothing was inexhaustible. This was the case with oil resources, and the same was true for women's milk. With excessive exploitation, what came out of the oil field was not oil, but water. And if they did not listen to the milking and eating, the women's milk would also become a nutritious drink. "Mr. Xia, is that the bottle?" Helena pointed to the glass bottle on the bedside table. Charlotte nodded, and then he stuck out his tongue and pursed his lip. He found that he was really addicted. Smelling the unique milk fragrance from the bodies of the holy maidens, his saliva was about to flow out. Helena and the other three went to the bedside table to take a glass bottle each, and then tried to milk Charlotte. "The mouth of the bottle is too small, it's not easy to squeeze," Helena said. Really, why do I have so much milk? Constantine said. Oh, I missed it again. Jennifer exclaimed. Son of God, do you have a bigger bottle? Julia, who was holding a snow-white bottle in one hand and a bottle in the other, looked at Xia Lei with an innocent and pitiful expression on her face. Charlotte suddenly walked over, pushed her down on the bed, and then opened his mouth and kissed her. It was shameful to waste, but glorious to save. Chapter 1299. The night gradually deepened. Darkness enveloped the sky and the earth, and there was no light from the moon or stars. There were only a few candles and oil lamps in the ancient castle. They were like lighted matches in the dark night, and could be blown out by the wind at any time. There was no lightning, and rain came without warning. Dense raindrops fell from the dark clouds, knocking on the tiles and windows of the ancient castle, making dripping sounds. This sound had the attribute of tranquility, and it could calm one's mind. But in this room, it was a different situation. No one could remain calm. The silver armor had already left Charlotte's body, and pieces fell here and there on the carpet. The clothes of the 4 holy knights had also fallen on the carpet, one piece here and one piece there, giving a messy scene. The old European-style bed was even more messy. Drinking milk was nothing in itself. It was the first thing a person would do when they were born. But Charlotte was a normal man. His ability in that area was also proportional to his needs. The stronger his ability, the stronger his needs. In addition, if he drank too much milk, he would get drunk, and once he was drunk, he would not be able to control himself. The 4 holy knights teased and seduced him, and that would naturally happen. Turning the holy knights of the hospital into a woman seemed to be what Charlotte was best at. He had already done it once, and now he was doing the same thing again. In fact, he also wanted to control his impulses, but in the end, he failed. He was more impulsive than impulsive. The milk of the 4 holy knights brought him rich energy that nurtured life, and it also gave him the desire to create life. This actually happened to Giovanna, Stella, Rosa, and Teresa, as well as to Akiko Tsukino, and it was a regular occurrence. If there was a side effect of drinking milk to become stronger, then it was probably this. But every time he vented, the desire would subside, and his body would return to normal. So this side effect was also natural, and there were no toxic side effects. Outside the window, the pitter-patter of rain could be heard. There were also many voices inside the window. Some were praising, some were begging for mercy, some were moaning in pain, and some were moaning in drunkenness. They gathered together and formed a hymn of life with a strong rhythm. After a long, long time, all the torment stopped. The passion faded from the bodies of the men and women, but the still picture was still chaotic. Helena said in a soft voice, "Son of God, how are Giovanna and the others?" Charlotte said, "They are living a good life. The Rescue Society helps those who suffer. They have led the Rescue Society to do many meaningful things." "That," Constantine said, "Knight Captain Johnson said that they are all multimillionaires now. Is that true?" Charlotte said, "Yes, they are my people. I have the responsibility to make sure they live a good life." The 4 holy maidens looked at each other. Although no one said anything, their eyes were filled with envy. They were all holy maidens of the previous generation, and they had all been slept with by this man in front of them. Giovanna and the others had become multimillionaires, but they had gotten nothing other than that. They were all holy maidens selected by the Knights Hospital. Why was there such a big difference? Charlotte's branding power energy field had already captured the brain waves of the 4 women. He knew better than them what was going on in their heads. His eyes swept over the 4 tempting bodies and the granary that had nurtured him. He couldn't help but feel grateful. He didn't want to owe anyone anything, so he said, "Give me your account numbers. I'll give you $5 million. $5 million? The 4 holy maidens were stunned. Charlotte said, "You served me, fed me, and gave me the best things as a woman. Of course I have to repay you. So, I will give you $5 million. I hope you will accept it. Wow. $5 million. Each of us can get $1,250,000. Constantine suddenly became excited. She clenched her fists and waved them hard. Her snow-white breasts suddenly bounced. We are all millionaires. Ha ha. Julia laughed loudly. Helena and Anna hugged each other. Their snow-white breasts pressed against each other as if they were going to merge together. Such a hug could only be described with the word beautiful. Charlotte seemed to be influenced by them. He smiled and said, "You are wrong. It is not a total of $5 million. It is $5 million for each of you." The four women were stunned again. Charlotte smiled and said, "Only $5 million for four of you. What kind of person do you think I, Charlotte, am?" The four women were speechless. If what happened just now was regarded as a deal, it was probably the most expensive deal in the world. But obviously it was not a deal. They had volunteered for the Knights Hospitaller for their faith and the spirit of sacrifice. Of course, it was better to make money while sacrificing for their faith and the spirit of chivalry, so that they could live comfortably for the rest of their lives. As for Charlotte, he had received their service, so it was reasonable for him to compensate them. Just as the four saints were dumbfounded, Xiaolei said, "Give me a cell phone and give me your account numbers. I'll just send an email." "I will get it." Helena could not wait to jump off the bed. Then, she took out a phone from her clothes and handed it to Charlotte. She bounced over and back. Her breasts and the big white breasts trembled. It was extremely tempting. The four women gave him 4 account numbers. Charlotte edited the 4 accounts into an email, and then sent it to Super Xiaoqian, asking her to transfer $20 million to these 4 accounts. Super Xiaoqian would execute his instructions after receiving the email. This was as easy as taking something out of his pocket for him. Buying a full meal and having a good time with a woman with $20 million. In this world, only Charlotte would have such courage. There would not be another person like him. However, money was meaningless to him. As long as he wanted it, Super Xiaoqian would get it for him. "It's done. Go and check your accounts in 5 minutes, Charlotte said as he handed the phone back to Helena. "Thank you, Son of God. I have only just realized why Giovanna and the others are willing to follow you with all their hearts. They are so lucky. I am so envious of them." As she spoke, Helena opened her arms and gave Charlotte a fierce hug. The other 3 women also came over. It was obvious that they were going to start a new war. Charlotte said, "Go to sleep. I will wake you up tomorrow morning." He smiled. "You will only be able to prepare breakfast for me when you are refreshed." A shy blush appeared on the cheeks of the 4 women. How could they sleep in such a situation? The $5 million was burning their bodies like fire. They wanted to repay Charlotte with the good things they pursued. They also longed for water to extinguish the fire in their bodies. Charlotte knew very well what they wanted, but he was already full. The air that came out of his mouth and nose was filled with the fragrance of milk. Looking at the 4 women whose eyes were filled with desire, his eyes slowly darkened. His voice was also filled with a demonic feeling. "Go to sleep. You need sleep." This was deep hypnosis. Under normal circumstances, as long as he did this, the 4 women would fall asleep. However, something unexpected happened this time. He had hypnotized these 4 unsuspecting women, but the 4 women did not respond to his hypnosis. They were still staring at him, and their gazes were especially strange. "You guys!" Charlotte suddenly realized something, and a trace of alarm rose in his heart. At that moment, Helena suddenly pounced toward him. Her open arms covered the space for her to dodge to the left and right. Constantine also pounced from behind and hugged Charlotte's waist. Julia and Jennifer swooped down from the left and right. In that instant, the 4 women were like a cage that trapped Charlotte. No matter which direction he dodged in, he could not avoid them. Why did they suddenly become like this? What exactly happened to them? Charlotte did not have time to think at all. A second later, he was hugged by the 4 women. Some were holding his waist, some were hugging his chest, some were strangling his neck, and some were pressing down on his leg. In fact, he could have sent one of them flying with a punch or kicked them off the bed with a kick, but he did not do that. When he was surrounded by the 4 women, he only reached out and pried open Helena's hand that was strangling his neck. He did not care about the other 3 women. He thought that they were only restraining him and did not attack him. This was not normal. Xiaolei suddenly released the energy field of the branding power. When his energy field enveloped the 4 women were like toys that had lost their power, and all of a sudden, they all fell onto the bed. Some were sprawled, some were lying down, and some were curled up. The scene was unbearable to look at. At that moment, according to the feedback from the energy field, 4 white energy bodies appeared in Charlotte's mind. They were escaping from the bodies of the 4 women. In the blink of an eye, they gathered in the empty space beside the bed and turned into an energy body with obvious characteristics of a woman. Her eyes were very big, and her nose and mouth were very small. She looked like a cute girl from the anime. Charlotte could recognize this face even if it turned to ash. She was Isadabu. He had expected Isadabu to come back, but he did not expect her to come so quickly and so suddenly. After Isadabu's energy body appeared, Charlotte did not need to use the energy field to sense her existence. He could see her with his eyes, and very clearly. Their eyes met. Charlotte and Isadabu's expressions were very complicated. Charlotte stood up slowly. His legs were also quietly gathering strength. He was ready to jump back to the satchel that contained the crystal skull and the box of the world. Last time, he had used his heavenly spear to kill Isadabu when Isadabu wanted to eat him, and polluted her energy body. This time, he did not expect to use the same method to defeat Isadabu. In the room, there were 4 fair-skinned saintesses and a pure energy body, Isadabu. Her body was also very curvaceous. This should have been a very erotic scene, but in this room, there was only nervousness, caution, and killing intent. The air seemed to have frozen. Chapter 1300. I know what's in that bag, Istabel finally spoke. I'm really afraid of what's in that bag, but I have to remind you that you need time to get it, and I can do a lot of things in that time. For example, I can kill these 4 women and then attack you. Charlotte had actually run through his thoughts many times in his mind. He needed at least 1 second to jump to the bag, and then at least 2 seconds to take out the crystal skull or the box of world. 3 seconds was indeed enough for an existence like Istabel to do a lot of things. Of course, he could give it a try, but Istabel had made it very clear that as long as he dared to move, she would kill these 4 women. When he thought of these 4 beautiful and young lives dying, his body felt like it was bound by a rope, and his hands and feet were bound. Istabel laughed. Your weakness is still so obvious. Haven't you thought of changing it? Are women that important to you? The right to rule this world, and even decipher the mysteries of the universe, and obtain the most powerful power, don't these appeal to you at all? Charlotte also calmed down. He slowly got off the bed. What are you trying to say? If I pursue power, and become a monster like you and Kasia Ruiz, what good will it do you? I don't want to talk nonsense with you. Tell me, how do you want to solve this? Istabel's voice turned cold, and her strangely large eyes were filled with hatred. What do you mean by how do you want to solve this? Humph! Istabel snorted. Don't play dumb with me. You know what I'm talking about. You're talking about. Charlotte avoided the topic. Let's talk outside. This is not the place to talk. Talk outside? You're still afraid that I'll kill them. Istabel sneered. I'm warning you, if you think about them even a little bit more, I'll kill them immediately. I'd like to see how important these 4 women who have slept with you after knowing you for less than 24 hours are to you. Charlotte was slightly taken aback. He had a feeling that, for some reason, the Aisatabu who appeared this time seemed to be a little different from before. Her emotions had become impulsive and irritable. In the past, she was cold and emotionless. No matter who or what she faced, her emotions would not fluctuate. She would kill whoever she wanted and do whatever she wanted without a trace of hesitation or scruples. But now, she was hesitant to kill these 4 women. This was something she would never have dared to imagine in the past. Aisatabu's body was actually a soul. Emotional fluctuations would cause her to become unstable. From this point of view, her injuries had not fully healed. What he had done to her the last time, the impact it had on her, and the consequences of that impact were something that even she herself couldn't estimate. "All right, I don't care if they live or die." Charlotte shrugged and pretended to be indifferent. "What does it have to do with me whether you want to kill them or not? Is this true? Then I'll eat them," Aisatabu said and looked like she was about to attack. "Don't," Charlotte hurriedly said. "I'm just kidding. Why are you so serious? It's fine if you want to talk here. Go ahead, I'm listening." "I've already said it. How do you plan to solve this?" Aisatabu suppressed the anger in her heart. "Today, you have to give me an explanation." There was no point in continuing to play dumb. Charlotte knew very well what she was talking about. He smiled bitterly. "You want me to give you an explanation? Then shouldn't I also want you to give me an explanation? Don't forget that you were the one who wanted to eat me. If I hadn't done that, I'm afraid I would have died in your hands." Aisatabu suddenly shouted at Charlotte, "I didn't do anything wrong in wanting to kill you." Charlotte was speechless. It was really troublesome to reason with a woman. This truth applied to the human world as well as to Aisatabu. "You threatened my plan. You tried to destroy my base. In fact, you did. What's wrong with me killing you?" Aisatabu was showing signs of losing control of her emotions. Charlotte smiled bitterly and said nothing. What was the point of arguing? "I can kill you, and you can kill me. But you actually used that disgusting thing to enter my body. Not only did you enter, but you also shot," Aisatabu said, and did not want to go any more. She raised her hand and pointed at Charlotte's lower waist. "Cut it off. That's the explanation you should give me. Cut it off and we'll talk about other things." Charlotte was so angry that he laughed. "Do you think you're God? That I have to do whatever you say? That I have to fulfill your request? F***ck your mother. I'm standing right here. Don't you want to kill me? Come on. Don't you want to cut off my penis? Cut it off yourself. You can go to hell." Aisatabu suddenly pounced on Charlotte. Her pure energy body instantly condensed into an oval shape. Like a football flying at supersonic speed, she hit Charlotte in the blink of an eye. Xiaolei was already prepared. He crossed his arms in front of his chest when she looked like she was about to make a move. Boom! A dull sound rang in the room. Charlotte's body was sent flying by Aisatabu. He shot toward the thick stone wall like a cannonball. However, the moment he hit the wall, Xiaolei hooked the tip of his right foot and the satchel on the floor was lifted by the tip of his foot. It flew into his hands. Boom! The stone wall collapsed. Charlotte's body flew out of the castle and landed heavily on the ground. Aisatabu flew out of the hole in the wall. Her body once again turned into a football falling at high speed in the air. She directly hit Charlotte's head. If she hit Charlotte, his head would most likely split open like a watermelon under a hammer. Charlotte rolled close to the ground and instantly moved several meters away. Boom! A loud sound rang out and a large crater appeared on the ground. Although Charlotte had already avoided this thunderous attack, he was still hit by the shattered stones in many places. His skin was torn and his flesh was exposed. He jumped up and quickly retreated. His right hand reached into the special satchel and took out the box of world. As soon as the world box appeared, Aisatabu suddenly retreated and instantly retreated to a spot several dozen meters away. Charlotte did not give chase. He held the box of worlds and vigilantly looked at Isitabu in the distance. He probed, "Why are you so afraid of it?" Isitabu did not answer Charlotte's question. She just stared coldly at Charlotte. "Why am I not afraid of it?" Charlotte continued probing. "Didn't you come here to find the answer?" "You will know the answer soon," Isitabu said. Charlotte said, "He's on this island. Aren't you afraid?" Isitabu just snorted coldly. There was a hint of contempt in her voice. "That guy is like a rat. He's dirty and cunning. He only knows how to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to steal. Do you think he's a match for me? I look down on an opponent like him. He's the same kind of person as you. He's a prehistoric figure in your world, right?" Isitabu did not admit it, but she did not deny it either. Charlotte continued, "You look down on him so much and even disdain to be his opponent. But you made some kind of agreement with him, right?" Isitabu still remained silent. She did not admit it or deny it. After venting the anger in her heart, she calmed down instead. This was what Charlotte did not want to see the most, because this Isitabu was the scariest. Charlotte spread his hands. "You said you wanted to talk about something, but you didn't say anything. What else can we talk about?" Isitabu was silent for a moment before saying, "Be careful that day. If you're smart enough, you might have a chance to live." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "He's here." "I don't want to see him," Isitabu said. When her voice fell, she disappeared into the void. The rain was still laughing endlessly. It hit the ground, making a sound and splashing water. Some rainwater gathered in the big pit that Isitabu blasted out. The reflection of a dark cloud was cast on the water. The dark cloud was especially thick. It seemed to be carrying something that would fall down at any time and smash the ground into pieces. Charlotte's gaze swept across the surroundings quickly from near to far. The mountain forest was dark. There was wind and rain, but he did not find anyone, nor did he find any animals. He did not find any trace of Kaja Ruiz either. He always appeared in a black robe. If he came and did not change his appearance, Charlotte was confident that he could find him. But he couldn't see or feel anything. He also had a feeling that danger was approaching. It made him feel that Kaja Ruiz was hiding somewhere nearby, spying on him and observing him. After a few minutes of this stalemate, Charlotte could not hold it in any longer. He roared from the depths of the valley, "Kaja Ruiz! I'm here! Come out! Kaja Ruiz! I'm here! Come out!" Charlotte's voice flew out of the castle and echoed in the valley. It spread far and wide. After a while, there was no response. Not in the valley, not in the castle. Charlotte then realized that no one had moved around the castle since Isitabu appeared. Under normal circumstances, there should be patrolling knights. Moreover, with such a loud noise, unless the knights were deaf, they would be awakened even if they were asleep. Charlotte turned and walked into the castle. He entered from the hall. As soon as he entered, he saw a few armed members of the Night Hospitaller lying on the ground. He had seen 2 of them yesterday afternoon. His gaze instantly penetrated their skulls and entered their brains. Then he found that their brains had shrunk and rotted. Isitabu had a midnight snack on the way here, which was probably the case. Charlotte did not kill them, but they were still dead. In the eyes of Isitabu and Kaja Ruiz, humans were just food. They could kill them at will without any mercy. Charlotte walked to the stairwell. As he climbed the stairs, he used his X-ray vision to see the rooms in the castle. He saw many people, but none of them were alive. Including the night captain, Johnson, he was also dead. He collapsed in his room with a Bible in his hand. The God he believed in did not help him survive this calamity. Charlotte returned to the room on the 2nd floor. He found that except for the 4 holy virgins who slept with him, everyone else in the castle was dead. The 4 female knights were still lying on the bed. Their sleeping positions were very indecent. They were deeply hypnotized and did not know what happened in the castle. They would not dream, they would simply fall asleep. Charlotte's gaze moved to the ground. The parts of the silver armor that the four women took off were still there. This made him let out a long sigh of relief. At this moment, the feeling of danger and someone spying in the dark suddenly disappeared. Charlotte thought to himself, he came and left? Isitabo was right. Kaja Ruiz is like a mouse. He came but did not show up. Did he have to wait until the last day of the deadline he set for me? Does that day have any special meaning? Chapter 1301. At daybreak, the rain stopped. The four women woke up one after another. The interval was less than a second. It was as if there was an alarm clock in their heads, waking them up when the time came. They saw the big hole in the wall and Xia Lei, who was standing beside the hole. He looked in the direction of the holy palace and didn't move at all, like a stone statue. What happened? Helena asked in surprise. Why is there a hole in the wall? I didn't hear anything, Constantine said. Julia jumped off the bed and walked toward Charlotte barefoot. Son of God, what happened? Charlotte turned to look at the four women. There was an attack last night. Apart from you, everyone here is dead. The four women were stunned. I put their bodies in the church in the castle, Charlotte said. I think they need a ceremony. You should go and take a look. The four women hurriedly put on their clothes and went out. Xia Lei also followed them and participated in the funeral ceremony that the four women held for the deceased. He didn't kill those people, but they died because of him. If he didn't come here, Isitabo wouldn't come here. If Isitabo didn't come, Johnson and the people here wouldn't have died. After the funeral ceremony, the four women went to the forest behind the castle with tools to dig a hole. Charlotte used a handcart to move the bodies into the forest, then helped the four women dig the hole. After working for a long time, they finally buried all the bodies. There were no tombstones. The four women tied wooden boards into the shape of a cross and wrote names on them. After working for a long time, Charlotte was sweaty and dirty. After returning to the castle, he went into a bathroom to take a shower. The four women also went to take a shower, but not with Charlotte. The people were all dead and no one boiled water. The water that flowed down from the showerhead was cold. Charlotte's skin had a very sensitive reaction, and his body's immune system adjusted accordingly. It only took him a few seconds to get used to the feeling of a cold shower. During this period of time, he had been drinking a lot of human milk, including some of the best breast milk given to him by women who had never had children before. The side effects of eating living humans and those infected with the hellhound virus had been completely eliminated, so his skin had returned to normal. It was no longer crystal clear, and his reaction to heat and cold was no different from a normal person's. Apart from this, his strength had also improved by leaps and bounds, becoming several times stronger than before. However, no matter how strong he became, after fighting with Isitab last night, he still came to a depressing conclusion. If they were to fight normally, he would not be able to defeat Isitab at all. Of course, he would not be able to defeat Kaja Ruiz either. After all, these two opponents had lived for an extremely long time. The number of people they had eaten could probably build an international metropolis. Longer evolution time, more energy, this was not something someone like him, who had only been on the path of evolution for a few short years, could compare to. Another point was that Isetabu and Kaja Ruiz were pure energy bodies, so they were not afraid of physical attacks at all. The marksmanship and firearms that he was proficient in were completely useless against them. Moreover, if he were to fight purely with the power of branding, he would obviously be in a weaker position. This was a situation that had no solution. As he was bathing and thinking about the problem, Charlotte suddenly remembered what Isitab said before she left. Be careful that day. If you are smart enough, you might have a chance to live. This was what Isitab said before she left. This sentence seemed to replay in Charlotte's mind, But he could not understand the intention of Isotab saying this, nor could he understand what she was hinting at. Believe her? Xia Lei snorted coldly, and a self-deprecating smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. She and Kasia Ruiz have been plotting from the beginning to frame me. Now is the time for her and Kasia Ruiz to reap the rewards, so why would she be kind enough to help me? Don't forget, she and Kasia Ruiz are the same kind, and she has a secret agreement with Kasia Ruiz to target me. Footsteps approached. Charlotte's thoughts were immediately interrupted. His gaze penetrated the bathroom door, and Helena, Julia, Constantine, and Jennifer entered his sight. The four women approached the bathroom door carefully. They were not holding the towel and clean clothes that they used to serve Charlotte, but 4 pistols. Charlotte could not help but smile bitterly. He could completely feel the desire for revenge emanating from them. It was obvious that they regarded him as the murderer. He was the one who killed Johnson and the people in this castle. The 4 women tiptoed to the bathroom, and the muzzles of their guns were aimed at the bathroom's wooden door. Shooting at the wooden door was a very simple thing to do, but they seemed very nervous and in pain. All of them were hesitant and could not fire. Charlotte's voice suddenly came from the bathroom. I do look very strange, but let me tell you, I am not the murderer. If I am the murderer and I killed those people, why would I keep you alive? Would I keep you alive for revenge? His voice startled the 4 women outside the door. Helena quickly calmed down. She maintained the posture of pointing the gun at the wooden door and said, Don't try to lie to us. You killed one of our brothers when you came. You once bathed our holy palace in blood. Julia roared fiercely. Come out with your hands in the air. Otherwise we will shoot. Constantine's voice sounded like he would shoot at any moment. The bathroom door opened and Charlotte walked out. He had a towel tied around his waist, and he did not have time to wipe the water droplets off his body. Those water droplets made his body look very smooth and delicate. Coupled with his perfect mermaid lines, his body was simply a work of art created by a master. The 4 women were slightly stunned, but only for a moment. They still maintained the posture of pointing their guns at Charlotte, and all of them looked very fierce. They were knights of the hospital, after all, and not ordinary women. Charlotte shrugged with a relaxed expression. I will say it for the last time. I am not the murderer. I can't be bothered to explain it to you. If you don't believe me, then you can leave. The money I gave you is enough for you to live happily for the rest of your lives. We love money, but we will not betray our beliefs for money, Julia's voice said. And our chivalry, Helena's voice said. I don't want to kill you. Charlotte's voice turned cold. There was a limit to his tolerance. Helena suddenly threw a handcuff on the ground, and then shouted at Charlotte, Put it on and follow us to the Holy Palace. Your sins need to be confessed in the Holy Palace Church, and then you will be judged. Just as she finished speaking, Constantine, who was standing next to her, suddenly kicked her in the butt. The kick was very heavy and she staggered and almost fell to the ground. What are you doing? Helena looked at Constantine angrily. Constantine looked terrified. I don't know. I can't control my legs. As soon as she finished speaking, Julia, who was standing next to her, suddenly raised her leg and kicked her in the butt. She almost fell to the ground from the kick. I can't control my legs either. Jennifer was the one who kicked Constantine. Her forehead was covered in cold sweat. It's you. Helena suddenly understood something. She pointed the muzzle at Charlotte again. She wanted to shoot, but she suddenly realized that she could not control her hands at all. She only struggled for 2 seconds before throwing the gun on the ground. Helena was not the only one who threw the gun in her hand. At the same time, Constantine, Jennifer, and Julia also threw the guns in their hands on the ground. But this was not the end. Julia walked toward Helena, suddenly hugged her, and kissed Helena on the lip. The same thing happened to Constantine and Jennifer's hands. Not only did they kiss, but they also touched each other's bodies. The scene of a female knight's revenge was full of positive energy. In the blink of an eye, it was filthy and full of negative energy. Just as the 4 female knights were entangled, Charlotte walked to the bed. He took off his towel, put on his clothes, and walked toward the door with his equipment bag. "Where are you going?" Helena had 2 tongues in her mouth. Her voice was muffled, but she still tried her best to speak. The other 3 women were also ashamed and furious. Their minds were very clear. They knew what had happened, but they just could not control their bodies to do that shameful thing. Charlotte only turned back to take a look, and then continued walking. Wrong. Constantine's voice was also muffled. Now that things had developed to this stage, the 4 female knights knew very well that if Charlotte wanted to kill them, they would already be dead. But he did not do that. With his ability, if he killed someone from the hospital knights, there was no need for him to deny it. Because even if he admitted to it, the hospital knights could not do anything to him. And they also thought of the $5 million. If Charlotte was the murderer, he did not have to give them so much money. They began to regret when they realized they were wrong. Charlotte stopped at the door. "I want to go to your holy palace. If you have thought it through, then come. I will wait for you outside the castle." After saying that, Charlotte walked out of the room. The 4 women's bodies suddenly regained their freedom. Helena pushed Julia away, and Constantine also pushed Jennifer, who was entangled with her. The 4 women did not chase after him immediately. "Is he really the Son of God?" Jennifer murmured. "Don't think about it. Let's go quickly. If he changes his mind, we will not be able to be with him," Constantine said. "Serving him is the great captain's order, and nurturing him is the mission that God gave us. No matter which mission it is, we have to complete it. This is probably the greatest thing we can do in this life." "Then what are we waiting for?" Jennifer got up from the ground, picked up the pistol on the ground, and was about to chase after him. "Hey! Jennifer, your underwear is about to fall off." Constantine's voice sounded. Jennifer looked down and almost fell to the ground. Her panties were wrapped around her ankles, and if she took another step, she would trip over them. She pulled up her underwear and glared at Constantine angrily. Constantine shrugged. "I can't control my hand. It was the Son of God who made me do it. You should feel honored. There are 4 of us, and he only took off your fig leaf." Jennifer was speechless. The other 3 women laughed. Women were really strange creatures. In the corridor, Charlotte sighed. There was a trace of guilt in his heart. For him, the right thing to do was to let the 4 women leave Malta as far as possible, because that was the safest thing to do. But in the end, he still decided to take them with him because he needed their milk. Chapter 1302. The 5 horses galloped on the muddy road in the valley, and finally arrived at the seaside. Under the guidance of the 4 female knights, Charlotte crossed the reef area by the seaside, and then came to the waterway that led to the Holy Palace. Constantine pulled out a small boat from behind the reef beside the waterway, and the 5 of them entered the waterway. The waterway was not dark, and there were braziers on the rock walls to illuminate it. Under the illumination of the fire, the waterway was sparkling. Occasionally, a few fish could be seen swimming past the side of the boat. They were not afraid of humans at all. Constantine and Helena were at the bow and the stern respectively. The 2 women were rowing the boat with oars. Julia and Jennifer sat on Ciale's left and right, but they were clearly not idling around. Not long after the boat entered the waterway, Julia nudged Charlotte with her elbow. "Son of God, are you hungry?" Without waiting for Charlotte to answer, Jennifer, who was on the other side, had already lifted her top. "Son of God, your breakfast is ready." Charlotte was speechless. The Son of God's reserve disappeared the moment Jennifer leaned over. He craved power, so he also craved milk. The pitter-patter echoed in the quiet tunnel. Charlotte had tried his best to control the sound, but it was too quiet here. The slightest sound would be magnified, and it would sound especially loud. That strange sound caused trouble for the other 3 women. They did not want to look, but they could not control their eyes. It was as if there was a warm, furry worm crawling inside their bodies. Their bodies were itchy, and so were their hearts. No matter what, the nurturing boat sailed steadily, and there were no signs of it capsizing. After Jennifer and Julia nursed Charlotte, they went to take Constantine and Helena. Charlotte was also happy to take turns like this, so he had a full breakfast. The boat arrived at the pier at the end of the waterway. The pier was empty. There was not a single person, and only 2 braziers beside the stone stairs were burning quietly. "What's going on? There are usually guards here." Helena, who was the last to nurse Charlotte, stood up in the boat. As she spoke, she grabbed the hem of her shirt and pulled it down. The majestic snow-white scenery was immediately covered. Charlotte stood up from the boat. He licked the white stain off the corner of his mouth with his tongue and pointed to the water outside the boat. "The guard is down there. He's dead." The 4 women looked over, but they could only see the wave. They couldn't see anything underwater at all. "Where is it? Why can't I see it?" Jennifer said. Charlotte said, "I naturally have my ways to see it. If you want to see it, you have to dive." The 4 women looked at each other. In the end, no one was willing to dive down to see a corpse. Charlotte disembarked from the boat and stepped onto the pier's platform. His gaze swept across the rocky ground, and he quickly noticed the traces of being dragged on the rocky ground. However, there were only traces of the corpse. There was no trace of the person who dragged the corpse. Charlotte's heart sank. In that instant, he thought of one person, Kasia Ruiz. Then he thought of Isotab, but he didn't think the latter was very likely. Isotab didn't even know how to deal with corpses. It was the same situation in the knight's castle. She killed so many people, but she didn't touch the corpses at all. With her personality, those corpses were equivalent to dead fish and shrimp. She wouldn't bother to touch them. However, Kasia Ruiz was different. He was more cunning and cautious. Isotab even called him a dirty rat. So, Kasia Ruiz was the most suspicious. The 4 women also left the boat and stepped onto the pier. Charlotte's gaze swept across their faces. "Go back and leave this place. Whether it's Italy or America, the further the better." "What about me?" Jennifer stared at Charlotte. Charlotte said, "For your safety, I have to face opponents that are beyond your imagination. If you follow me in, you might die inside." "We are knights," Helena said. "This is our holy palace. If our brothers and sisters die, and we run away without even saying a word of prayer, are we still knights?" "Protect faith and help suffering," Julia said. "Protect faith and help suffering." The 4 female knights recited the creed of the Knights Hospitaller together. Charlotte shook his head with a bitter smile. He realized that his worries and persuasion were unnecessary. They were the holy ladies of the Knights Hospitaller. They had firm beliefs and belief. They saw honor as their lives, and they were not afraid of sacrificing themselves. Asking them to leave now would make them feel worse than killing them. "Since you've already made up your mind, follow me. But I wish you good luck." Charlotte entered the stone stairway. He had done all he could. They had made their decision, and they would bear the consequences. Since they were fearless and could face it calmly, why should he continue persuading them? After passing through the stone stairway, a beehive-like space came into view. Cave rooms were distributed on the mountain walls like beehives, and a small path spiraled to the bottom space. Standing at a high place, they could see the holy church at the bottom. Light shone from the church, illuminating the surrounding area. Some of the buildings in the underground space also had light, but no one could be seen walking around. The cave beside the stone stairway was pitch black, without a single light. This place seemed to have died suddenly, and there was no living person. Charlotte's gaze swept across the caves, and finally landed on the holy church in the underground space. But whether it was the caves he had seen, the church in the underground space, or the surrounding buildings, there was not a single person, and there were no corpses. Xiaolei furrowed his brows. Everything here didn't look normal, and there was a strange aura everywhere. But he still braced himself and walked on. He had a hunch that this place was inextricably related to Cassia Ruiz from the beginning. It might even be Cassia Ruiz's old nest on the island of Malta. The 4 female knights followed Charlotte down. They did not know the situation, and when they passed by some caves, they would sometimes push open the door of the cave room to take a look. But no matter which cave they entered, there was no one in it. Where did our people go? Helena ran out of a cave, unable to hide the confusion and nervousness in her heart. I just talked to Han's dad the day before yesterday. He said his grandson was admitted to university, and I even gave him my blessings. I don't know. Cain, who was very close to me, is also gone. He treated me like a brother. What happened? Is this God's punishment? What did we do wrong? Julia's expression was very pained. Charlotte continued down, and he did not comfort the 4 female knights. Everyone in this world had their own destiny, and no one could escape it. This also included him. He came to Malta to welcome his own destiny. He could not even protect himself now, so how could he protect the hospital knights? He could not even protect himself now, so how could he protect the hospital knights? The figure of his father, Xia Changhe, appeared in his mind. The 2 fellows that his father was talking about were obviously Cassia Ruiz and Isatab. His father saw through the problem very clearly. If he wanted to prevent such a tragedy from happening again, he had to solve the problem at its root. Cassia Ruiz and Isatab were like the 2 malignant tumors of this world. Every time they acted up, they would bring suffering and pain to this world, and they might even destroy this world in the end. But how could it be easy to kill these 2 demons? The 5 of them arrived at the door of the Holy Church. Charlotte pushed open the tightly shut door of the church, and a statue of Jesus came into his sight. In that instant, he froze for a moment. There was a number written in red paint on the chest of the statue of Jesus. 3. This number made Charlotte's heart sink. He knew very well what this number meant. It was the countdown to his fate. He still had 3 days from now. Then who did it? Helena also noticed the number 3 on the statue of Jesus. She was very angry. This is blasphemy. Jesus, he's crying. Constantine suddenly pointed at the eyes of the statue of Jesus and exclaimed, "Blood tears." Red liquid flowed out of the corners of the eyes of the statue of Jesus. The red liquid looked very viscous, just like fresh blood. Julia and Jennifer pulled out their pistols and quickly rushed into the interior of the church. Helena and Constantine did the same. They also pulled out their pistols and rushed into the interior of the church. It was not strange for them to have such a reaction. They thought that the blood tears looked so fresh. If someone had done this prank, he might still be in this church. Charlotte did not stop them because he had already scouted the surroundings. There was no one else here apart from him and the 4 female knights. Charlotte walked to the statue of Jesus and looked at the number 3 on the statue quietly. A drop of red tear dripped down the cheek of the statue, and the number 3 was immediately covered up. But it was already lingering in Charlotte's mind. 3 days, 72 hours, 4,320 minutes, 259,200 seconds. Was that all he had left in his life? For some reason, a nameless anger suddenly burned in his chest. Charlotte turned and rushed out of the church. She stood on the platform below the church and roared, "Cassia Ruiz! Get out here! Get out here!" His voice echoed in the dead silence of the underground space and did not stop for a long time. There was only his voice. There was no other sound. "Cassia Ruiz! You're a rat! Old rat!" Charlotte was indignant. She was indignant at all. Cassia Ruiz still did not respond at all. He seemed to be a very principled person. He gave a time, and he would only appear when the time was up. If the time was not up, No matter how Charlotte insulted and provoked him, he was indifferent. There was not the slightest emotional fluctuation. Such an enemy was the most terrifying. Helena suddenly ran out with a nervous look. "Son of God, come and have a look. We found something." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "What did you find?" "I don't know. You'll know when you come with me." Perhaps she was too nervous and anxious. Without waiting for Charlotte to say anything, Helena grabbed Charlotte's hand and ran into the church. Passing through the corridor between the tables and chairs, Charlotte's gaze fell on the statue of Jesus again. The tears of Jesus were no longer flowing. The blood-colored liquid showed signs of coagulation. They seemed to be human blood. But before Charlotte could take another look, Helena had already dragged Charlotte to Angelio's study. Chapter 1303. Angelo's study was very tidy. There were no signs of a fight, and there was no blood on the floor. Everything looked normal. Charlotte was no stranger to this study. It was in this study that he had beaten the former commander of the hospital knights half to death and forced him to tell him the location of the Holy Palace. At that time, he had also seen through the structure of the study, but there was no secret space or special design. On the way here, he was still thinking about what the 4 female knights had found in Angelo's study, but after looking closely, he found nothing. He was a little curious. Just as he was about to ask Helena, who had pulled him in, Julia suddenly said something. "God's son, look." Julia handed a piece of paper torn from a notebook to Charlotte. No wonder nothing was found. The piece of paper was in Julia's hand, and he did not look at the 4 women. The paper was suddenly torn. It was not big, and it was in the shape of a strip. The paper was wrinkled, and there was an incomplete sentence written in Italian on it. Hell's Gate, Demon, Bathroom. The content on the paper was written horizontally, and the person who tore the paper tore it vertically, so what was left on the paper were 3 words in a long paragraph. These 3 words were inexplicable, like the manuscript of a nameless fantasy novelist. The publisher did not like it, so he tore it in a rage. Hell's Gate, Demon, Bathroom? Xiaolei muttered these 3 words, but for a moment, he couldn't guess the connection between these 3 words. If it was a complete paragraph, what was written on the paper would be clear at a glance. The current situation was really hard to guess, because too much content had been lost. "What is this?" Charlotte said aloud. "Helena, did you call me in just to see this? What does it mean?" Helena said, "I'm not too sure, but the handwriting on this piece of paper is Commander Walton's." "So what?" Charlotte said. Helena recalled for a moment. When the incident happened at the Night Castle, the great commander was actually at the Holy Cathedral. Now that the hospital knights are in such a big mess, it's impossible for him to leave here unless something has happened to him. A wry smile appeared on Xiaolei's face. Helena's words were as good as pointless. All the people here had disappeared into thin air. Was this not considered an accident? Julia suddenly thought of something and said, "I came to the commander's study 3 days ago. He even chatted with me for a while. He said something about a great day coming, and I asked him what it was, but he did not tell me. I still remember the look on his face. He looked so strange." Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. "Great day? Did he say which day it was?" Julia shook her head. "He didn't say anything about that. The reason I remember this is because the commander seemed very excited at that time. It was so strange. It was a great day." Xiaolei naturally thought of the end of his lifespan when he heard this. Could the great day that Walton was talking about be the day that would happen in 3 days' time? His mind was full of speculations, but his thoughts quickly returned to the shredded note. Where was this note found from? Helena said, "This note was found on the ground under the desk." "Found on the ground under the desk?" Charlotte asked again. Helena said, "Yes, I'm sure, because I was the one who picked it up." An image suddenly appeared in Charlotte's mind. Walton was sitting at his desk writing notes, or perhaps it was a diary. He was very excited. He wanted to record a certain great day. But for some reason, he tore that piece of paper. He tore the torn paper and threw it into the wastepaper basket, but the shredded paper fell under the desk. But the problem was, how could the words Hell's Gate, Demon, and Bathroom appear in an account of a great day? This didn't make sense. Is there a bathroom in this cathedral? Charlotte asked thoughtfully. Yes. Helena answered straightforwardly. There is a bathroom in the Holy Cathedral. It's in the Grand Commander's room. In the Knights Hospitaller, only the Grand Commander has the right to stay in that room. No one else has the right. Bring me there, Charlotte said. All right, follow me. Helena led the way. Charlotte followed the 4 female knights into a room. It was a very special room. All the furniture and even every piece of the floor was very old. Judging from the paint color and the degree of wear and tear, it was at least 700 or 800 years old, or even more than 1,000 years old. The swallowtail cross emblem of the Knights Hospitaller could be seen everywhere in the room. Everywhere exuded a religious aura. There was a set of silver knight armor in the room. There was a 2-handed sword on the arm guard of the armor. The armor and the sword were also very old. There were many cracks on the armor, and there were many nicks on the 2-handed sword. It was not difficult to tell that this was a set of real knight's armor. The owner of the armor and sword was also a knight who had been through hundreds of battles. That is the armor and 2-handed sword of the first Grand Commander of the Knights Hospitaller. It is our holy relic, Julia said, her eyes filled with reverence. Charlotte was not interested in a set of scrap metal. His gaze swept across the room full of antiques, and he quickly found the bathroom. The bathroom was in a corner of the room, and it was very small. The bathroom door was not a modern glass door, but an ancient wooden door. There was no modern water heater or shower head in the bathroom. There was only a large wooden tub and a stepping stool for people to climb into. There were 2 towels hanging on the bathroom wall, as well as a bath towel and some toiletries. This was the bathroom of the dignified Grand Commander of the Knights Hospitaller. It was really special. Charlotte walked into the bathroom. The 4 female knights followed Charlotte into the bathroom. The bathroom, which was already very small, suddenly became narrow and crowded. Charlotte's gaze slowly swept across the walls and floor, and finally stopped on the large wooden tub. There's nothing here, Jennifer said. Jennifer said, maybe it's just a boring piece of paper, and the things written on it are also boring. We shouldn't waste time here. We should go to the Holy Palace to look for clues. Let's listen to the Son of God. He will definitely help us, Constantine said. As soon as she finished speaking, Charlotte suddenly opened his arms, hugged the large wooden tub, and lifted it with all his might. With a crisp crack, the large wooden tub was lifted from the ground. The bottom of the wooden tub was double-layered, and the bottom layer was a structure for drainage. A plastic pipe was installed on the wooden plank. The diameter of the plastic pipe was the size of a fist, and the inside of the pipe was dark. It was impossible to see what was below with normal vision. However, Charlotte's vision had never been normal. His gaze had already slid down the plastic pipe. It was this slide that gave him a shock. The bottom of the plastic pipe was empty. It went straight down and he couldn't see the bottom. How was this a drainage pipe for a bathtub? This was simply a pipe that poured water into the ground. Son of God, did you find anything? Helena curiously moved closer to the plastic pipe, wanting to take a closer look. However, Charlotte pulled her away. Don't go near it. Be careful. This pipe is very strange. Is there a snake? Jennifer took a step back, and it seemed like she was very close. Charlotte smiled bitterly. He was already too lazy to explain to them. He directly said, but find me some explosive devices. I want to blow up this bathroom. The 4 female knights stared at Charlotte dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what he said. Hurry up and go, Charlotte shouted. Don't you want to find out where your people went? The 4 female knights then went out to get the explosive devices. Xia Lei was the only one left in the bathroom. Without the noise of the woman, his mind was a little clearer. His gaze shifted to the inside of the big wooden tub, and a little white congealed substance caught his attention. He reached out and dug out the white congealed substance, and then brought it to his nostrils to sniff it. A faint milky fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Charlotte was stunned for a moment. He thought it was the residue of soap or glass glue, but he never thought it would be the sediment of milk. And it wasn't milk, but human milk. He had drunk so much human milk, so he was familiar with that taste. In that instant, Charlotte seemed to understand everything. The Walton obviously wouldn't take a human milk bath here. He collected human milk, poured it into the bathtub, and then used the plastic pipe to transport it underground. What was underground that needed milk? Charlotte didn't believe in any milk-sucking monster, nor did he believe in any milk-sucking demon. He had already locked on to one person, Kasia Ruiz. Kasia Ruiz was also learning from him to drink milk. Only a few women around him knew that he could improve and perfect his evolution by drinking human milk, and he had never told anyone about it. But he drank so much milk, and he even bought milk from pregnant women to drink from the market. How could Kasia Ruiz, who had a temporary protection agreement with him, not know about it? This was what happened. Kasia Ruiz discovered his secret and even observed the magical changes in his body, so Kasia Ruiz wanted to give it a try. So, the Walton was here to transport human milk to him. Kasia Ruiz's nest was finally found, and it was right under this bathroom. Charlotte's lips curled into a sneer. You want me to drink milk? You're really too naive. Human milk, of course, is used to nourish humans. You and Isotab are people from another world, and human milk is not food for you. Moreover, you don't even have a body, so how are you going to absorb the energy in human milk? And even if you made clothes like Isotab, you're not the original owner of that clothes, so no matter how much milk you drink, it's useless. On this blue planet, there was only one person who could perfect his evolution by drinking human milk, and that was Charlotte. This was his exclusive path of evolution, and no one else could squeeze in even if they wanted to. Charlotte took out a glow stick from his large equipment bag, twisted it, and then threw it into the plastic pipe. The glow stick fell from the plastic pipe, and kept falling and falling. Only after a minute did it fall to the bottom. In Charlotte's mind, a number that he had just calculated appeared. This pipe was 1 kilometer long. Chapter 1304. Boom. There was an explosion, and the wall of the bathroom collapsed. Smoke, fire, and dust were immediately released. The entire church was shaking, giving people the feeling that it was about to collapse. When the dust settled, there was a big hole in the bathroom floor. The plastic pipe was gone, and the big hole was full of mud and rock. Although he couldn't see the bottom, Charlotte believed that he would find the way down soon. The reason was simple. The plastic pipe was 1,000 meters deep, and it was impossible for drilling equipment and related construction machinery to enter this place. Some people wanted to buy a pipe that was 1,000 meters long, so it must be empty down there. A few minutes later, boom, there was another loud explosion. This time, the ground collapsed, and a bottomless cave appeared at the bottom of the big hole. The light stick from before was buried in the mud and rocks, and no longer glowed. Charlotte twisted 3 light sticks at once and threw them down. The 3 light sticks fell in different places, and lit up different areas. With the weak light, Charlotte saw some of the situation at the bottom of the cave. There were stalactites one after another, and they were like spears piercing into the ground. Endless darkness covered the underground space, and no living things could be seen. This underground cave looked like the entrance to hell. Walton had written Hell's Gate on that shredded piece of paper. Before discovering this cavern, Xia Lei had thought it was just an idea based on his religious belief. Only after discovering this cavern did he realize that Walton was describing the cavern below him. The 4 female knights walked in, passed through the ancient messy room, and came to Charlotte's side. They looked around carefully, but they couldn't see the situation underground like they did when they came down. They could only see weak light, and some white things in the area covered by the light, but they didn't know that it was stalactite. God's son, this. Helena's voice was full of surprise. Why is there a big hole here? I've been here more than 100 times, but I've never found this place, Constantine said. God's son, are we going down? Jennifer looked worried. Is it the world of demons down there? Charlotte was silent for a moment before saying, Your commander said very clearly that this is Hell's Gate. It's very dangerous down there. Go find me some ropes, then I'll go down and you guys leave this place. Leave here. Helena said, Rope, we've made it very clear. We're knights. We're not afraid of death. Constantine also said with a determined expression, Son of God, we will fight with you, even if there are really demons down there. Don't say any more. Charlotte said, There's no signal here. You should leave this place and contact the other Knights Hospitaller. If your commander and the people here are all dead, you will be needed to rebuild the Knights Hospitaller. But, Julia wanted to say something but hesitated. Charlotte said, Don't say that. Death is actually very easy. You can just close your eyes and it will be over. Sometimes, living is more difficult than dying. Do as I say. You have your mission, and I have ours. The 4 female knights looked at each other. Finally, Constantine said, All right, we'll go find you some ropes. Charlotte watched the 4 female knights leave, and he thought to himself, All good things must come to an end. If I bring you down there, you won't be able to survive. I'll face my own fate. Cassia Ruiz's lair was down there. If he couldn't even guarantee his own survival, how could he guarantee the safety of the 4 female knights? After the 4 female knights left, Charlotte took off his equipment bag and put on the silver armor. He also put the crystal skull and the box of the world into his special bag. He also took out all the weapons in his equipment bag, but he only chose a Gale assault rifle and 2 high-explosive grenades. No amount of guns would be useful against an opponent like Cassia Ruiz. He could only rely on the power of his brand, the crystal skull, and the box of the world. The 4 female knights returned half an hour after they left. They used 4 masons' wheelbarrows to push 4 carts full of ropes over. They took all the ropes to the Waltons' room and connected them by hand. We've found all the ropes here, but it's still not enough. I estimate that the total length won't be more than 600 meters, Constantine said. It's enough, Charlotte said. I'll figure out the rest myself. How can we do that? Julia said. If the ropes can't reach the bottom, it'll be very dangerous for you to go down rashly. Why don't we go to the knight's castle and find more ropes? Jennifer said anxiously. She put down the rope in her hand. Helena, let's go to the knight's castle and find more rope. I'll go with you. Helena also stood up. Charlotte stopped them. No need. You can leave after the ropes are tied. Don't come back. The 4 female knights focused their gazes on Charlotte. They had complicated looks in their eyes. The man in front of them had suddenly barged into their lives, catching them off guard. At first, they were only ordered to serve and please him because the Knights Hospitaller couldn't afford to offend him. In their subconscious, they actually saw Charlotte as an enemy. But after a series of events, they suddenly realized that this man had entered their hearts, and they couldn't forget him. It wasn't just because he was the first man to occupy their bodies. The main reason was this man's charm and the radiance of the Son of God that shrouded him. Now that he was going to leave, it was very likely that they would never see him again. How could they leave just like that? Charlotte could feel their sadness and the obvious emotions that they revealed. He smiled bitterly. Believe me, I'll be back. Then, I'll go to Italy and treat you to pizza. That should be fine, right? Constantine suddenly threw away the rope in her hand and burrowed into Charlotte's arms. Constantine's plump breasts pressed against his chest, bringing a soft and hot feeling. It was a very comfortable hug, but Charlotte's heart was filled with bitterness. He was actually not the kind of man who showed mercy everywhere, but those women always threw themselves at him like moths to a flame. The 4 female knights in front of him were a typical example. They were only sent by the Walton to please him, and their hearts were certainly not reconciled. But not long after, they couldn't bear to leave him. If he let them go, they would all be sad, and the atmosphere would be like a breakup. What could he do? "Promise us that you'll come back alive," Constantine said in Charlotte's ear. Charlotte nodded. The 4 women tied the rope, one end of the rope to a pillar in the room, and the other end was placed in the underground cave. The careful Julia also tied a glow stick to the end of the rope. The glow stick hung in the darkness, only illuminating a dozen square meters, and nothing could be seen. This situation made the 4 women very worried. Charlotte had already made all the preparations. He said, "Go, leave this place. Remember what I said and contact your people. But remember, don't bring anyone here for the next 3 days." "I what?" the 4 women asked almost at the same time. Charlotte said, "To live." The 4 women were slightly stunned, but they could see the seriousness of the matter from Charlotte's serious expression. Charlotte picked up his helmet and was ready to set off. "Wait, you!" Julia suddenly called out to Charlotte, but stopped herself. Charlotte smiled. "Don't worry, I'm very tough. I won't die. Go, don't be like this. You're knights." Julia bit her cherry lips. "Eat a little before you go." Charlotte was speechless. "Eat a little before you go." In the Chinese world, such words were usually said to people who were about to die. Julia was Italian, so she obviously didn't know what this meant in the Chinese world. She said it very clearly, and her actions were very on point. Without waiting for Charlotte to say anything, she lifted up her clothes. A snow-white scenery was exposed to Charlotte's vision. It was so delicate that it seemed like it would melt with a breath of hot air. The messy bathroom and the alluring Snow White did not conflict at all. Instead, there was a very special sense of beauty, and it was also very touching. Constantine, Jennifer, and Helena also lifted up their clothes, exposing their snow-white skin to the air. Mountains rose and fell in Charlotte's vision, and his nostrils also smelled that sweet and alluring smell. That smell was like a soft little hand grabbing his tongue, trying to pull his tongue out and put it back where it should be. A ball of fire also lit up in his lower abdomen. That flame burned quietly, burning. "Eat a little and go," Helena said. Her eyes were wet, and her eyes were also filled with anticipation and reluctance. Charlotte threw the helmet on the ground and pulled the golden-haired Helena into his arms. "Don't say go, it's inauspicious." "What?" Helena didn't understand what Charlotte meant. However, Charlotte didn't explain. He lowered his head and opened his mouth with a moan. The holy nurturing began. Actually, it was not a big deal to have food everywhere. Right now, Charlotte was having food everywhere. He could eat whatever he wanted, and the feeling of being surrounded by delicious food was so refreshing. As he drank, Charlotte also slowly relaxed and thought things through. Even if he was going to die, he would die after eating his fill and having enough fun. If he really couldn't come out alive, he had no regrets. He had lived a happy life in this life. He had countless confidants and groups of children. He went from a kid working in a construction site to the richest man in the world. Even America had to be wary of him. It was worth it for a man to live to this extent. Clang, there was a crisp sound. Charlotte suddenly felt that a piece of his armor was missing. He suddenly realized something, and he said in a muffled voice, "You guys can't be serious, right? This is our tradition. During the Crusades, the saintesses had to sacrifice themselves for the warriors of the order. Our love will give you strength and luck," Constantine said. Then, she waved her hand and there was another clang. "This is our blessing, Son of God. Accept our blessing." Not only will it bring you joy and relaxation, but it will also bring you courage, Julia said. Her voice was even more muffled than Charlotte's, and it was almost inaudible. Was that thing so magical? However, since the saintesses said so, what else could he say? Then accept the blessing. Charlotte closed his eyes. Chapter 1305. The warrior in silver armor quickly descended and soon disappeared into the darkness. Next to the entrance of the underground cavern, 4 fair-skinned women looked down at the bottomless underground world beneath their feet. They wanted to see that magical man one last time, but they would never see him again. Tears welled up in their eyes, and then they condensed into tears. Let's go. Helena broke the silence here. Do you think we will see him again? Julia asked. Helena shook her head. I don't know, don't ask me. She actually wanted to know the answer too. Constantine patted Jennifer's shoulder. Let's go. The 4 women slowly walked out, each and every one of them seemed to be in a daze. After a few seconds, they suddenly turned around and picked up the clothes on the ground to cover their bodies. This was their situation. That man affected them so much that they even forgot to put on their clothes. And they did not know that while they were putting on their clothes next to the entrance of the underground cavern, a pair of eyes was staring at them 300 meters underground in the darkness. Charlotte shook his head hard, and only then did he clear the beautiful bodies of the 4 female knights from his mind. The beautiful scenery above his head was tempting, but he still looked away. He had enjoyed beauties and delicious food, and now it was time to fight for his fate. The darkness stretched endlessly in his vision, as if there was no end. Charlotte used his eyesight, and his vision penetrated the layers of darkness, and he saw further and wider places. What he saw gave him a big shock. This underground cavern was so big that it was beyond his imagination, and its shape was like a bamboo shoot that had been hollowed out. It was very small at the top and gradually expanded downward, and his position was only 1/3 of the way down, about 200 meters away from the nearest rock wall. If he jumped down directly, he would definitely be smashed into meat paste, and even if he did not fall to his death, the spear-like stalagmites below would stab him to death. The rope made by the 4 female knights was about 600 meters long, and it was obviously impossible to use it to slide to the bottom of the underground cavern, but it was possible to use it to swing to the cliff wall, and then climb down from the rock wall. After making up his mind, Charlotte began to shake his body, and as he swayed, the swing of the rope became wider and wider. He was like a spider hanging on a spider's web, floating in the air with the wind, borrowing the force to reach the place he needed to reach. 2 minutes later, the rope sent Charlotte to the side of the cliff. Charlotte thrust his armored right hand into the crevice of a rock. The gap was less than a centimeter wide. Under normal circumstances, even a finger would not be able to fit through it. In that instant, his bones and muscles formed a perfect synergy, and he gathered all the strength in his body to a single point. Not only the power of his body, but also the energy of the branding power. The energy of the branding power within his body also gathered on his right palm. Kacha! His armored right hand pierced into the crevice of the rock like it was tofu. His left hand let go of the rope, and his body was fastened to the precipitous rock. Success! Charlotte, on the other hand, was still in a daze, staring at his right palm, which was stuck in the crevice of the rock, dumbfounded. This was the first time he had worn the silver armor. He had not expected the tattered silver armor to be so powerful. In his imagination, he estimated that he would have to try several times to fix himself on the rock wall. He even prepared a backup plan, that is, if he could not climb the rock wall while wearing the armor, he would take off the armor and try again. He did not expect that he would succeed after only one try. In fact, if you carefully analyze it, it is normal for the silver armor to be so powerful. A very simple example is that he once forged a samurai sword for Akiko Tsukino with fake X-Mystic gold, and only a little bit of X-Mystic gold was cast on the blade, and Akiko Tsukino's samurai sword had the sharpness to cut iron like mud. Therefore, under the premise of using the power of the brand, it was not worth making a fuss about, for him to plunge his palm into the rock. The strength of the silver armor made Charlotte happy, and he began to move down in the same way. He soon discovered that not only could he insert the additional palm into the rock, but he could also kick into the rock with his feet in combat boot. The rock he faced was smooth and steep, and many places were inclined inward at 120 degrees. But it was as if there was a ladder under his feet, and he went down very quickly and easily. Half an hour later, Charlotte came to the ground of the catacombs. The ground was full of stalactites of all kinds. From time to time, droplets of calcareous water dripped from the top of his head, adding bricks and tiles to the stalactites in the catacombs. Charlotte walked to the middle of the catacombs. He wanted to find the plastic pipe, and then follow the plastic pipe to find Kasia Ruiz. That was the plan, but he did not have much hope. If Kasia Ruiz was here, he should have appeared during the previous explosion. But even when he blew up Kasia Ruiz's roof, Kasia Ruiz did not appear. Passing through a forest made of stalactites, Charlotte found the plastic pipe. It had been smashed into dozens of pieces, falling here and there. It looked very messy, but he still found the right direction. It originally wanted to extend to the west of the catacombs. Charlotte looked up, but the west side of the catacombs was pitch black, and he could not see anything. But at the same distance, he could clearly see what was in other directions. That place was not normal. Charlotte walked to the west side of the catacombs, and a strange phenomenon occurred. He was getting closer to the rock wall in the west, but the feeling of not being able to see clearly was getting stronger and stronger. There seemed to be a boundless black curtain covering that direction, airtight and hiding some secret. After walking for a distance, Charlotte finally found the reason. His energy field had captured a special kind of energy. This energy field was very similar to the energy field he encountered in Incheon, Korea. The most obvious difference was that the energy field in Incheon was transparent. It was like a huge soap bubble that enveloped the black building. But the energy field in front of him was black, like a boundless black curtain covering the area in the west of the catacombs, making it impossible to see what was behind. Charlotte suddenly remembered a name that Isadabu had given to Kasia Ruiz, Dark Apostle. Dark Apostle, this name did not have any specific meaning, just like Fast Legs Rooney, Invincible Hero, and the like. It was just a gimmick. Only now did Charlotte realize that it was not a meaningless gimmick, but a real attribute. At the edge of this dark energy field, Charlotte's heart was filled with surprise. Isadabu and Kasia Ruiz are both from the same world. One is a prehistoric figure, and the other is. He smiled bitterly. Isadabu is also not a modern figure. Time doesn't seem to mean much to that world and their race. However, since they are from the same world and the same race, why are their energy fields so different? Could it be that in that world, the people of that race, their energy fields are actually different? These were all just his guesses, he could not be sure. However, the world of Isadabu and Kasia Ruiz had already attracted his interest. Because of his experience in Incheon, Korea, Charlotte did not dare to approach the black energy field recklessly. After observing for a while, he slapped a piece of stalactite and threw it at the black energy field with all his might. Bang! A sound similar to a grenade explosion suddenly resounded throughout the catacombs. That piece of stalactite instantly shattered. The energy field created by Isadabu would produce electricity when it encountered an attack, but the energy field created by Kasia Ruiz had an explosive attribute. If the two were to be compared, Kasia Ruiz's and his energy field was obviously more aggressive. Bang bang bang! The sound of gunshots rang out, and bullets flew through the black energy field. Boom! Boom! Boom, every bullet exploded like a grenade. The warhead was directly torn into pieces. A magazine was emptied, and the black energy field calmed down. Charlotte did not reload the magazine and continued to shoot. It was meaningless to shoot again. Kasia Ruiz, Charlotte shouted at the black energy field. I'm here, how much longer are you going to wait? Come out. Although he was a little sure that Kasia Ruiz was not here, he could not help but try. The black energy field was still there, and only his own echo could be heard in the catacombs. It went from strong to weak, then disappeared, and finally, there was only dead silence. Charlotte stood quietly for a while. He thought of a few ideas, but in the end, he rejected them all. This was not Isitabu's base in Incheon, where a helicopter would need to open the energy field to land. There was not even a mosquito here. The black energy field in front of him was like a tortoise shell lying on the ground. There was not a single gap that could be used. The ideas that he thought of could not get in at all. Damn it! You're a tortoise! Charlotte was so angry that he did not care about his manners anymore. Old tortoise, do you know? Isitabu said that you're a rat. Now you're like a rat, hiding from me. Get out here right now. The sound of cursing echoed in the dark valley, but there was still no response from Kasia Ruiz. Charlotte walked around the edge of the energy field, looking for a flaw or a gap in the energy field. He kept a safe distance from the energy field, not daring to approach it rashly. Just like that, step by step, Charlotte walked for a full half an hour before he reached the bottom of the rock wall in the west area. He found that the black energy field was not actually oval, but a semicircle. Half of it was exposed to the air, and the other half was embedded in the rock wall. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. He observed the structure of the rock wall, and then he dug a deep hole near the edge of the energy field. With the silver armor on his hands were like excavators, and the hard rock wall was as fragile as tofu under his hands. Every time his palm went down, a piece of the rock wall would fall with a crack. After digging the hole, Charlotte threw a high explosive grenade into the deep hole that was as long as his arm. Boom! A violent explosion sounded, and the rock wall trembled, and then a part of it collapsed. The black energy field that was connected to the rock wall also showed obvious fluctuations, but it quickly stabilized. Although he was not able to completely destroy it, Charlotte still saw a glimmer of hope. He climbed onto the pile of rubble, waved his arms, and continued to dig the hole in the rock wall with his armored palm. In just a few minutes, a deep hole that was as long as his arm appeared on the rock wall, and the other end of it extended towards the direction of the black energy field. Charlotte pulled the safety bolt of the second high-explosive grenade, and then stuffed it into the hole that he had just dug. Boom! With a loud noise, the rock wall that was already cracked from the explosion suddenly collapsed. The shock wave of the explosion sent the shattered rock fragments flying towards the black energy field. It felt like a heavy machine gun was madly firing at the black energy field. Boom! Rumble! Chapter 1306. Violent explosions rang out one after another. The rock wall, which had already been damaged, was affected and collapsed once again. This time, the collapse had hollowed out the bottom of the rock wall. Suddenly, huge rocks came crashing down from above. The largest of those rocks was probably over 1,000 tons. They came whistling down with the momentum of thunder and lightning. The power was comparable to meteorites falling from the atmosphere. Before the rock wall collapsed, Xiaolei had already turned around and dashed away. In that instant, the power of the brand gathered in his feet, and with every step he took, he would leap more than 10 meters. It really felt like he was flying. 4 steps, a distance of 50 meters. Charlotte's feet suddenly stomped heavily on the ground. Then, his upper body bent down. His body was like an arrow that had been shot out. With a whoosh, he drew a silver trajectory in the air that was about 30 meters long. In that instant, a boulder that was at least 10,000 tons suddenly fell from a height of a few hundred meters. Like a comet, it smashed into the black energy field. Rumble! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly rang out. With a loud bang, the shock wave of the explosion pushed out in all directions like a landslide. Wherever it passed, everything in its path was destroyed. The grotesque stalactites were instantly blown into stone powder. Charlotte's body was like a leaf in the wind. With a whoosh, he was blown dozens of meters away. The power of this explosion was equivalent to the detonation of several ballistic missiles at the same time. It was enough to destroy a military base. If Charlotte was not wearing the silver armor, his body would probably have been torn apart. Not only him, but the entire underground cavern shook a few times. However, the underground cavern did not collapse. The space was too big. Moreover, it was made of hard rock. If it was a building built by humans, even if 10 Dubai hotels were tied together, they would probably be blown into ruins. Tui! Charlotte spat out the stalactite powder in his mouth. Then, he crawled out from the pile of stalactite powder. He was about 100 meters away from the center of the explosion, but he was still almost buried alive by the stone powder. Thinking back to the scene at that time, even he had a lingering fear. The boulder that was over 10,000 tons had disappeared and turned into rubble. The black energy shield had also disappeared. It was as if it had never existed. Without the cover of the black energy barrier, the space behind the rock wall was revealed. It was a huge arched stone door dozens of meters high. Behind the stone door was a black stone path, and the stone slabs extended upwards at a slanted angle. However, those stone slabs weren't embedded in the ground. Instead, they were suspended in the air. That's right, buying a stone slab didn't even have any support underneath. One after another, the stone slabs floated in the air. The distance between each stone slab and the gradual ascent of the slope reached a perfect degree. Even if he used infrared to measure the distance, there would be zero error. Piece after piece of stone slabs formed a heavenly road. What was at the end of this heavenly road? Charlotte's heart was filled with shock. His imagination was boundless, but he couldn't see further. The air behind the stone door seemed to contain some kind of substance that could suppress the energy of the brand in his body, which caused his eyes to be restricted. Everything in the world must have a counter. This was the law of the universe. Of course, the energy of the mark could not jump out of the scope of this law. Charlotte stared blankly for a few minutes before walking forward. Instead of guessing here and there, he might as well go in and take a look. However, even if he hadn't seen the truth, the impression this place gave Charlotte was already very high-end. At the very least, it was much better than Isotab's place. Humph! Is this a rat's nest? You really know how to hide. I want to see what you've done in this world for such a long time. Charlotte paused in front of the arched stone door for a moment before stepping onto the first stone slab. The moment Charlotte's foot stepped onto the stone slab, it trembled slightly. It gave off the feeling that it couldn't bear his weight and was about to sink down. And beneath his feet, there was actually another bottomless pit. There were endless bottomless pits, as if they were about to reach the depths of the earth. This was not normal at all. Even the uncanny workmanship of nature couldn't create such an underground world. Charlotte's both feet stood on the stone slab. It was very strange. When he stood on one foot, the stone slab would tremble and appear unstable. But when he stood on it with both feet, the stone slab stabilized. What kind of stone slab was this? Charlotte wasn't in a hurry to climb up. His eyes moved to the stone slab under his feet. After careful observation, he found that these stone slabs were actually the stone of the faceless warrior statue. These stone materials didn't belong to this world at all. What is the identity of Cassia Ruiz? When he came to Cassia Ruiz's lair, Charlotte found that even if he exhausted his imagination, he couldn't guess Cassia Ruiz's identity. Charlotte climbed up, taking one step at a time and stopping at a time. Every step was careful. When he climbed to the 12th stone slab, there was suddenly a bright light in the world shrouded in darkness. The bright light was so bright that Charlotte quickly closed his eyes. At this moment, he was so nervous that he subconsciously squatted on the stone slab, ready to jump back. If he was attacked, he could go back to the starting point. However, the distance of 12 stone slabs was nothing to him. However, after waiting for a full minute, nothing happened. Charlotte opened his eyes, and the scenery in front of him quietly changed. In his field of vision was a street with people coming and going. There weren't many cars, but there were a lot of bicycles. Selling popsicles. Selling popsicles. Sweet popsicles. A peddler of popsicles was pushing his cart along the street. His cart was loaded with a foam box, which was covered with a thick towel. A man pulled a little boy as he passed by the street. The little boy looked like a tiger, lively and adorable. When he saw the popsicle vendor, he stopped and shouted, "Dad, I want to eat popsicles." The man's face showed a smile. "Do you want to eat?" "Yes." The little boy nodded his head very seriously. "Then, Dad will buy it for you." The man pulled the little boy to the popsicle vendor. Charlotte held the little boy's head, and tears welled up in his eyes, because what he saw was him and his dad Xia Changhe in the future. This is not real, this is an illusion. It's these extraterrestrial stones that are affecting my brain. But Charlotte couldn't help but look to remember. Is Dad still alive now? Did Dad go to the place where he had his first date with Princess Yongmei? Did Dad's heart feel at peace? These concerns also emerged in Charlotte's heart, and he couldn't control them. The situation was like this. He clearly knew what affected his brain, but because the other party's external force was too strong, he couldn't walk out of the illusion that he clearly knew. It felt like you knew you were dreaming, but you couldn't wake up. Even if you opened your eyes, you couldn't see the real world. His dad bought a popsicle for little Charlotte, and he took his hand and walked forward. Little Charlotte had a popsicle in his other hand, which was to be brought home for his sister Xia Shui to eat. His dad and little Charlotte walked further and further away, and the sky was dark. The surroundings were dark, and the wind was blowing. Crack! A bolt of lightning struck down from the dark sky, and a residential building appeared under the light of the lightning. It was a very simple residential building, without elevators, beautiful tiles, and glass. The outer walls were red shale bricks, and many places were mottled with red mud. A teenage girl appeared in front of the residential building. She was very young and very beautiful. She was holding a swaddle in her hand, and there was a baby in the swaddle. The girl entered the stairwell of the residential building, and climbed up the stairs that were full of cigarette butts and waste paper. Her body was already wet from the rain, and her clothes clung to her body, revealing her exquisite curves. But in terms of female characteristics, she was still very young, far from the level of maturity. From this characteristic and her face, she couldn't be more than 18 years old. Rainwater dripped down from the girl's hair. Her forehead, eyes, and cheeks were covered in water droplets, but it was impossible to tell whether they were rainwater or tears. Her nose was red, and so were her eyes, as if she had just cried bitterly. The girl climbed to the rooftop, and she looked up at the thunderstorm sky. Suddenly she screamed, "Why? Why are you doing this to me? Why?" Sob, sob, sob. Crack. Rumble. A flash of lightning and a clap of thunder, and the whole world seemed to be shaking. The girl stumbled and fell on the rooftop, and the swaddle in her arms also rolled out of her hands. The swaddle opened, and a white and fat baby boy rolled out of it. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky. It was very strange that the raindrops the size of beans hit his tender skin, and the violent lightning and thunder did not scare him. He looked so quiet, and his eyes were serene, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. The girl crawled towards the child, and she picked up the swaddle, preparing to pick up the child who had fallen on the rooftop. She reached out to the child, but just as she was about to touch the child, She retracted her hand as if she had been electrocuted. The girl cried, "No, no, no, I can't have you, I can't have you," sob, sob, sob. "You're a monster. You killed me. You ruined my life." The girl cried, but the child did not even look at her, and continued to look at the thunderstorm sky. His eyes were very strange and could not be deciphered. "Do you know? Do you know? I just got into university, and I haven't even had a boyfriend, so how did I give birth to you? Tell me, where did you come from? Where did you come from? Say something." The girl cried, and her emotions had completely gone out of control. The child's eyes finally moved to the girl, but he did not cry, nor did he make a fuss. The girl climbed up and retreated, crying as she retreated, "Child, it's not that Mommy doesn't want you, but Mommy can't have you. If Mommy takes you, others will break Mommy's spine, and your grandma and grandpa will beat me to death. Don't blame Mommy, just pretend you never came to this world. I don't have a monster like you for a son." The girl turned and ran, and she did not even leave the swaddle for the child. In such a thunderstorm, a newborn child was left on the rooftop in the cold wind and rain. This was not only abandonment but also killing. Rumble, the rain continued to fall. The raindrops the size of beans fell on the child, causing his skin to tremble. Even an adult would not be able to withstand this level of rainstorm, let alone a newborn child. However, the child was still so quiet, and did not make a sound. Chapter 1307. The young girl stumbled into the staircase leading away from the rooftop. When she entered the staircase, she turned around to look at the child who was lying on the rooftop. However, it was only a glance before she turned around and ran away. She never looked back again. Rumble, thunder rumbled, and the torrential rain continued. The torrential rain and cold wind battered the child, and his skin gradually lost its warmth. His eyes opened and closed, and the interval between each time grew longer and longer. This was a sign that his bodily functions were deteriorating and he was about to fall into a dormant state or even die. However, just as the child was about to freeze to death, a man in a raincoat appeared on the rooftop. The man was tall and burly, and he held a compass in his hand. Crackle! A bolt of lightning struck down, illuminating the night sky. The man's face was revealed under the illumination of the lightning. It was a very familiar face. It was the face of his father, Xia Changhe. Found it, found it. The old man mumbled to himself. He picked up the child, his hands trembling with excitement. That child was Charlotte. Charlotte suddenly understood. However, there was one thing he could not understand. His father was clearly not looking at the young girl. The hallucination before him had the nature of a memory. So, where did it come from? And the answer to this mystery seemed to be obvious. It was his own brain. Memory. Since it was a memory, it must be stored in the brain. However, back then, he was just a newborn child. His brain could not possibly have any memories. Moreover, after so many years, he could not remember anything. Why did it suddenly appear after he came here? As he was thinking, all the hallucinations disappeared. His vision was filled with darkness and he could see nothing. Oh no! Could it be that the energy field has activated again? Charlotte's heart was in a state of panic. He turned around to look. Sure enough, he could no longer see anything that he could see. The energy field had activated again. It was like a pot-lid cage, trapping him inside. Turning back, there was no turning back. Charlotte was prepared to continue climbing up. However, he suddenly realized that not only could he not see anything behind him, he could not even see the stone slab in front of him. The stone slab in front of him was only 1 meter away from him, but he couldn't see it. This was simply unimaginable to him. The darkness seemed to have suddenly increased. This space was like a bottle of ink, and he was in this bottle of ink. Every inch of space here was dark, so dark that one couldn't even see their own fingers. This kind of darkness even gave him a feeling of substance, as if it was a real substance, and not simply darkness that had lost all light. Then, the dark energy field began to move again. As the gravity increased, Charlotte could clearly feel the pressure on his bones. His bones rustled as if they would shatter at any moment. The gravity continued to increase, like a frog being boiled in warm water. Pooh! Charlotte spat out a mouthful of blood. His nostrils and ears were also bleeding. At this time, he felt extreme pain. Not only his bones, but also his internal organs. His internal organs and his bones felt as if they would shatter at any time. Is this the end of my life? Charlotte's brain was getting more and more dizzy. Such a thought emerged in his mind, and his heart was filled with bitterness. In this little time, if it weren't for the power of branding in his body resisting the external force, he would have been crushed into a pile of meat sauce at this time. The gravity was still increasing, pressuring everything in this space. Charlotte felt more and more pain, and his situation was getting more and more dangerous. On the verge of life and death, faces also appeared in his mind. The face of his father, Xia Changhe, Xia Shui, Long Bing, Shintu Tianin, Liang Xiao, Fan Fan, Jiang Rui, Tang Yuan, Liang Jiyu, Xia Long, Xia Fan, Xia Jianghe, Xia Dewang, Xia Yang, Xia Yu. Every single one of these faces represented the person he loved the most. Every single one of these faces was also a tie that he could not bear to part with. Charlotte roared. He was not willing to die inexplicably like this. He was not willing to leave his wife and children like this. But even the most intense roar of rage was useless against the frenzied flames of fury. The gravity in this space was still increasing. In this time, he felt that his bones were really broken, his internal organs were also about to break, and his brain was also on the verge of a coma, and he could lose consciousness at any time on the verge of life and death. Suddenly, a soft fluorescent light emitted from the satchel on his body. It was very weak, but in this absolutely dark space, even a little light was very conspicuous, like the ray of light that pierced through the darkness before dawn. This little light appeared, and the gravity on Charlotte's body receded like the tide. His bones were no longer rustling, his internal organs were no longer chaotic, and all the pain in his body disappeared. Charlotte's gaze moved to the satchel. He didn't need to open it, and he didn't even need to think to know what was emitting the light. The light coming from the satchel was pure and flawless, and it had a jade-like texture. This kind of light could only be emitted by the crystal skull. The crystal skull seemed to have saved him at the most crucial moment. The light from the crystal skull continued to emit from the satchel, and the soft and pure light slowly wrapped around him. It felt like Charlotte was the source of the light, and not the crystal skull. After coming back from the dead, Charlotte suppressed the excitement in his heart, opened the satchel, and took out the crystal skull. The light from the crystal skull spread further, and everywhere it passed, there was no more darkness. The suffocating gravity also disappeared, and it receded like the tide. The stone slabs that he couldn't see before appeared again, and it wasn't just the stone slabs that appeared, Charlotte could finally see further. This suspended stone sky path was actually not as long as he imagined. It was about 100 steps, and the length was no more than 100 meters. At the end of the suspended stone sky path, there was a stone mountain rising from the ground, and there was a building on top of the stone mountain. It was hidden in the darkness, and it was difficult to see it clearly. However, from its outline it was very wide, and it seemed to be a majestic palace. The stone mountain rising from the ground, the majestic palace built on top of the stone mountain, and the suspended sky path that led to the palace. All of this looked so unreal, and it gave people the feeling that they were in a movie, not the real world. But what was the standard of the real world? There had never been any standard. Even if there was a standard, it was just a standard set by humans based on their own culture and feelings. And such a standard would not be recognized even by creatures on the same planet. Take insects for example, in their eyes, humans were skyscraping giants. A tree was equivalent to a city. Charlotte didn't think too much about the authenticity of everything in front of him. Was that building on top of the stone mountain Kasia Ruiz's lair? He had stayed on Earth longer than humans had stayed on this planet. If this was all his doing, then it was not a strange thing. Charlotte held the crystal skull and continued to climb up. The crystal skull gave him confidence and courage. Since he had come here, he had to put an end to it. Step by step, one stone slab at a time, Charlotte approached the building step by step. The closer he got to the building, the light emitted from the crystal skull began to disperse the darkness around the building. When he stood at the end of the sky path that was suspended in the air, the true appearance of the building entered his line of sight with a single glance. It was a very strange building style. All the buildings were in the shape of a cube. Some were big, some were small, some were tall, and some were low. The first impression it gave people was that it was like a three-dimensional model drawn by a computer. All the buildings were piled up on top of the stone mountain, forming an oval shape. It seemed messy, but if one looked closely, they would find a pattern. They were like a whirlpool with distinct layers. Circle after circle of the cube buildings rotated, advancing toward the center. All the buildings were black, so it was a black whirlpool. Xia Lei's line of sight crossed over the cube buildings and came to the center of the cube building complex. A huge cube building entered his line of sight. It was bigger than all the buildings in the black whirlpool, and it was incomparably majestic. But judging from its shape, it looked like a cup on a motherboard. After this illusion appeared, a new optical illusion also appeared. The building complex at the top of the stone mountain looked like an oval motherboard. Could this be the architectural style of Kasia Ruiz and Isotab's world? Or was it something else? Turning off the observation, Charlotte's gaze returned to the front again. In front of him, not far away, was an arched stone door. However, it was not made of complete stones. Instead, it was made of stone strips piled up one after another. There was no cement between the stones, nor was there any kind of 3-in-1 soil. There was nothing, but the stones were firmly connected together, forming a majestic stone door that was tens of meters tall and tens of meters wide. Charlotte retracted his gaze and no longer hesitated. His feet stomped on the stone floor, and his whole body shot out like an arrow. He crossed the last distance of about 10 meters and landed on top of the stone mountain. The stone mountain was real. Charlotte's gaze locked onto the arched stone door. Without hesitation, he stepped toward the arched door. The crystal skull in his hand quietly emitted a soft and pure light. It was like a lantern in Charlotte's hand, and Charlotte was the guide of the underworld with the lantern. But he was not guiding the soul of others, but his own. Chapter 1308. Charlotte stopped in front of the huge, arched stone door. From what he could see, any piece of stone on the arched stone door weighed at least a few hundred tons. With such weight, even human cranes would find it difficult to lift it. And even if there were such cranes, no one could bring them to this place. So how were these stones hung and pieced together? It was impossible to imagine how it was done. Kasia Ruiz must have known the answer, but until now, he had not appeared. Charlotte walked into the arched stone door. The ground behind the stone door was also made of black rocks, but these rocks were not rocks of this world. They were very similar to the rocks that were used to make the faceless warrior statues. They contained an unknown energy. If it were not for the crystal skull in his hand to protect him, his brain would have been disturbed by this time, producing endless illusions. Charlotte walked towards the center of the black vortex. His goal was the huge CPU building. The stone road under his feet extended forward. It was curved, and circle after circle approached the center. On both sides of the stone road were cube-shaped buildings. There were no windows, but there were doors. In the process of walking, Charlotte could not help but enter several buildings. He was surprised to find that there were stone tables, stone beds, and stone chairs in those cube-shaped buildings. It was like the residence of ancient humans. Some of the buildings occasionally had some stone weapons, such as hammers and knives, stone axes, stone spears, and so on. But no matter which building it was, there was no one in it. Each building was clean and spotless. If one were to view this place as a city, then the people in this city seemed to have evaporated overnight, leaving behind this lifeless city of the dead. Charlotte's heart was full of guesses. Cassia Ruiz should not be able to build such a city. Because even if he had enough time and ability, where did these materials come from? But if Cassia Ruiz did not build this city, then where did it come from? Could it have flown over from another world? Then even if he flew over from another world, he should be on the ground. How could he drill into the ground? The hole in his head was wide open and could not be filled. Ta-ta, ta-ta. Charlotte's footsteps echoed in the empty street, as if there was a ghost accompanying him as he walked. Cassia Ruiz! Charlotte roared. Come out, I'm already here. We don't have to wait for the day you said. We can end it in advance. His voice echoed in the dead city, but there was no response. Cassia Ruiz. You are AF * King Mouse. Get the hell out here. Xiale opened his mouth and cursed. He wanted to use this method to provoke Cassia Ruiz to come out. There was still no response from the dead city, and his echo traveled far away. Just like that, he walked and walked. After walking for a full 2 hours, Xiale finally arrived at the center of the city and arrived in front of the huge building that resembled a CPU. This CPU-like building was located at the highest point and the most central location of the city. It was huge, majestic, and spectacular. In front of it was an arched stone door. The stone material was not complete. Like the stone door at the outermost entrance, it was made up of pieces of stone. They were of different sizes and each piece weighed hundreds of tons. It was also the only entrance to this huge building. Other than it, there were no other entrances to this building. Charlotte's gaze passed through the arched stone door. His vision was filled with darkness. Even with the help of the crystal skull, he was unable to see what was behind the stone door. What was going on? What was inside the building? It was unimaginable. After hesitating for a moment, Charlotte walked toward the arched stone door. Beneath his feet were stone steps. He did not know why, but as he walked toward the stone door, every step he took felt like he was taking a step away from this world. He was leaving this world while he was leaving his woman and child. This was a path of no return. A few minutes later, Charlotte arrived in front of the arched stone door. Strangely, the crystal skull could disperse the darkness around him, but it could not disperse the darkness in front of him. The arched stone door was only one step away from him, but it was this step that he could not take. Charlotte looked back and walked toward the stone door. One step forward. Boom. There was a tremor, a very slight tremor. It was like a stone had been thrown into a calm pond. The space before him was filled with darkness. He could not see anything further than one step. This space was filled with infinite gravity. If it was not for the protection of the crystal skull, he would have been reduced to dust in less than a tenth of a second. While Charlotte was still in a state of shock, the crystal skull in his hand suddenly trembled. It felt like it could be crushed by the infinite gravity at any moment. Brother, you must be okay. If you break, I'm afraid I won't have a corpse left, Charlotte said to himself. Fear was like a shadow that could not be removed. The crystal skull continued to tremble, and the frequency increased. Perhaps fear finally won over courage, or perhaps it was the reluctance to part with the world behind him, or the people he could not bear to part with. These factors suddenly erupted. Charlotte turned around and walked back. He had only taken one step after entering the stone door. Under normal circumstances, he would have walked out after taking one step back. However, after taking 2 steps, there was still darkness in front of him. He could not clearly see anything further than one step. He took another step and then a third step, but after 3 steps, he still could not see anything further than half of his vision. What's going on? Am I lost? But I only took 1 step. This is impossible. Charlotte was still in a state of shock. The fear in his heart grew stronger. He could not find an answer no matter how hard he thought. He braced himself and walked forward. He soon realized that there was no sound under his feet. No matter how hard he walked, there was no sound under his feet. But the ground under his feet was clearly hard stone. He kept walking forward, 1 step after another. In the end, Charlotte began to run. He was extremely fast. Under the white light of the crystal skull, he was like a meteorite passing through the atmosphere. He became the most dazzling existence in this dark world. He ran and ran. He did not know how long he had run or how far he had run. After a while, he stopped. He still could not see clearly and did not know where he was. He did not even know where he was. He was completely lost. He clearly remembered that although this building was huge, equivalent to a football field, the distance he had run was more than 10 fields. How could he not touch the wall? Could it be that this is a different dimension? But is that possible? This is just the interior of a stone building. Damn, this place is too strange. I'm trapped here. Am I going to die here? Charlotte muttered to himself. His voice could not be transmitted. It could only be transmitted through the halo formed by the crystal skull. If someone came out to talk to him at this time, he would not hesitate to give them $100 million. Being alone in such a strange space felt like wandering in the depths of the universe. It was extremely lonely. The only thing that relieved him was that the crystal skull seemed to have adapted to the gravitational environment here. It had stopped vibrating. Charlotte did not want to run anymore. He sat down and took out the box of the world from his satchel. There were also 4 bottles of human milk in plastic bottles. That was the dry food that Helena, Julia, Constantine, and Jennifer squeezed out for him. These 4 bottles of holy night milk were also his only food. Once they were used up, he would face the problem of food and water. And in this place, he could not find water and food at all. Charlotte opened a bottle of milk and took a sip. The sweet and fragrant milk slid down his throat and into his stomach, bringing warmth to him. He also calmed down a little. He was no longer so afraid. He could even taste the owner of this bottle of milk. It was Helena's milk. Her milk had a slight strawberry taste. It was more sour than the other 3 female knights. He had now become the world's top milk taster. After drinking a few mouthfuls of milk, Charlotte wanted to cover the bottle. But then he thought that the milk had to be fresh to taste good, and the energy would disappear if left for a long time. Then, he simply tilted his head back and drank the remaining half of the bottle. He slowly drank 4 bottles of milk. If he still could not find the exit, he would eventually die of thirst and hunger here. At most, he would live for a while longer. He quickly drank 4 bottles of milk. Although he still could not find the exit, at least he had satisfied his craving for milk. If he was going to die, he would die happily. Gulp, gulp, Charlotte simply drank all 4 bottles of milk. He burped. Satisfying. He casually threw an empty bottle out. The plastic bottle flew out of the area enveloped by the crystal skull. As soon as it touched the dark area, it was immediately crushed into powder by the infinite gravity. Charlotte's heart was filled with horror. He grabbed another plastic bottle and threw it out. This time, he locked on to the plastic bottle as he threw it. In his vision, the plastic bottle's flying speed was slowed down several times. He clearly saw the plastic bottle fly out and turn into powder the moment it touched the dark area. It was said to be powder, but there was nothing left of that plastic bottle, not even powder. How terrifying! If it wasn't for the crystal skull, I'm afraid I'd end up like that bottle, right? Charlotte's back was covered in cold sweat, and it was chilly. He did not throw the remaining 2 plastic bottles out because the result would be the same. It would not change even if he tried 100 more times. After sitting quietly for a while, a strange idea suddenly popped into Charlotte's mind. If I throw the box of time, what will happen? With this idea in mind, he grabbed the box of time and raised his hand to throw it out. But at this moment, a voice suddenly came from the depths of the darkness. You can't be that bored, right? Randomly throwing garbage in my place. Charlotte stood up abruptly and stared in the direction of the voice with vigilance. It was Kasia Ruiz's voice. Why am I in such a hurry to die? You still have 2 days. Kasia Ruiz's voice was a little closer to Charlotte this time. Charlotte said aloud, It doesn't make any difference to me if I die 2 days earlier or 2 days later. I'm not afraid of death, but I want to know why I'm dying. Show yourself, let's talk. Then you have to put away the box of world. Kasia Ruiz's voice sounded. He no longer approached and seemed to stay at a safe distance. Okay, I'll put it away. Charlotte put the box of world into a special satchel. If Kasia Ruiz attacked him, he was still confident that he could take out the box of world from the satchel. There's also the crystal skull, Kasia Ruiz said. Humph. Charlotte snorted coldly. Don't push your luck. This place has a terrible gravity. It doesn't affect an energy body like you, but I'll die. You want me to put away the crystal skull? Aren't you asking me to commit suicide? You also know the benefits of an energy body? Ha ha. Kasia Ruiz laughed. Poor Isotab, that bitch is obsessed with the real body. She's really stupid. At this point, he suddenly stopped laughing. You also want to lie to me. Even if you put the crystal skull in your bag, it will still protect you. The situation was indeed like that. The crystal skull had already started to protect him when he was still in the bag. Therefore, there was no difference between putting it in the bag and holding it in his hand. Chapter 1309. Charlotte did not put the crystal skull into the special satchel. He said, Do you know how Isotab described you? He said you were a rat. I never understood why he said that about you. Now I understand that you really are a rat because only a rat would hide in this dark place and not dare to see the light. Are you trying to provoke me? Kasia Ruiz's voice was as cold as ice. Charlotte said, I'm just telling the truth. Ah. Kasia Ruiz laughed. Don't try to deal with me the way you dealt with that bitch Isotab. I won't be provoked by you. Do you hear my laughter? I'm laughing, but there's no fluctuation in my heart at all. Charlotte was speechless. Put away the crystal skull. Kasia Ruiz's voice had the nature of an order. Charlotte snorted coldly. Who do you think you are? The god that dominates this world? Even if it's the god that dominates this world, I don't have to do whatever he wants me to do. My fate is up to me, not the heavens. Your fate is not in your hands, it's in my hands. Kasia Ruiz's voice was heard. Charlotte sneered. You want to kill me? What do you want from me? Since I have what you want, what are you waiting for? It's ridiculous that you actually want me to put away the world box and the crystal skull. Kasia Ruiz, you are very powerful, I admit that. But I still want to tell you, your opponent, I look down on you. In the depths of the darkness, Kasia Ruiz was silent for a moment before saying, You really have some ability. You actually made me a little angry. He sighed. Well, I gave you a deadline. I was going to wait until the deadline to find you personally, but I didn't expect you to have the ability to find this place. Since this is the case, let that day come early. Charlotte raised his vigilance. His eyes, and the power of branding were all activated. His body and consciousness instantly entered the highest combat state. At this moment, the darkness receded like a tide. Boom, 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 amidst a string of strange sounds, a bright light filled the entire space. The 8 energy pillars were placed in 8 different positions, forming an octagonal rhombus. The dark energy field just now seemed to be related to them, and the terrifying gravity also seemed to be related to them. Charlotte had seen Isotab's energy field before, but the one in front of him was different. They gave off a more ancient feeling, while Isotab's energy pillar seemed much younger. There was no standard to measure whether Kasia Ruiz's or Isotab's energy pillar was older or younger. It was just his intuition. His intuition was usually very accurate. With the light emitted by the 8 energy pillars, Charlotte finally saw the situation on the ground clearly. It was a piece of black rock with an extremely smooth surface and a faint feeling of transparency. It was like a huge piece of black jade. Within this piece of black jade, one could clearly see blue energy substances flowing, as if they were bolts of lightning imprisoned in the black jade. Kasia Ruiz appeared on the top of the octagon, wearing a black robe. He had no body, no face, and looked like an evil ghost in a wizard's robe. Kasia Ruiz did not want to have a body, but was that true? He always wore this black robe, allowing his energy body to prop up this robe, making him look like a human. He was actually a guy who said one thing but meant another. The crystal skull lost its light and returned to normal. Without gravity and the interference of the energy field, its reaction also stopped. After all, it was an object without consciousness, and it would not take the initiative to react. But Charlotte still held it, and did not put it into the special satchel. "I'm here." Charlotte broke the silence between the two. "What do you want from me?" Kasia Ruiz did not speak. Charlotte's branding power extended towards Kasia Ruiz. The moment his branding power came into contact with Kasia Ruiz, his brain drew a picture based on the information captured in the energy field. It was the appearance of Kasia Ruiz's pure energy form. Although he came from the same world as Isotabu, his appearance was different from Isotabu's. Kasia Ruiz's head was much bigger, his eyes were very small, and his mouth was very big and protruding along with his chin. It was fine if the mouth did not open, but if it did, it would definitely be a bloody mouth. Isotabu looked like a cute girl from the 2D world, and he was obviously a mutated ugly man from the 2D world. However, it was normal that Kasia Ruiz and Isotabu looked different. After all, the former was a prehistoric character from the unknown world. Evolution would change Isotabu's appearance, but Kasia Ruiz's appearance was destined. "Stop looking," Kasia Ruiz said. Kasia Ruiz spoke. "Using your human aesthetic standards to judge my appearance, I am indeed ugly. However, in my time, I was a man who was liked by women." "I have no interest in your appearance at all," Charlotte said. "Since you are not in a hurry, I do not want to die so quickly. Since we're opponents, let's have a chat. At least let me know why I'm dying." Kasia Ruiz did not agree, but he did not directly refuse either. "What's going on with this place?" Charlotte probed. "These rocks obviously have some kind of energy. They can't be something from this world. These rocks form a city, but there is only one person in this city. But my question is not about your kind. I just want to know where this city came from." "Let's change the question," Kasia Ruiz said. He said to change the question instead of flatly refusing. This meant that he was willing to talk. But this cooperation made Charlotte feel a trace of sympathy, which made his heart desolate. "What about my father?" "He is not your father. Didn't you see the truth when you came? I am not related to him by blood, but I regard him as my father. I am different from you. I am a person with feelings. I am not a rock, not a cold-blooded animal. He is just my dog. Do you still want to recognize him as your father?" Kasia Ruiz's tone was obviously insulting. "Even if he is a dog, I will recognize him as my father. You say he is a dog, but you are worse than a dog." "He," Kasia Ruiz said amidst the laughter. "You heard me laughing again, right? But I don't feel anything in my heart." "Where is he?" "Dead." Queijo Ruiz said. Did you kill him? Charlotte clenched his fist. Queijo Ruiz said, No, he solved it himself. Originally, I was going to kill him. No one has ever dared to betray me. The consequence of betraying me is death. Unfortunately, I was a step too late. When I got there, he had already committed suicide. He died in a dry well. I don't understand why he would do that. Charlotte's body trembled slightly, and his eyes became moist. Queijo Ruiz, of course, wouldn't understand because he was just a mass of emotionless energy. Dad knew he was going to die, and his last wish was to go to the place where he and Princess Yong Mei had their first date, and then go to the underworld to accompany Princess Yong Mei. That dry well was obviously where Dad wanted to go. Queijo Ruiz must know the specific location of the dry well, but he didn't want to ask. Dad said that it was his secret, his last secret. Then let Father keep this a secret. He must have told you everything, or else you wouldn't have found this place. Queijo Ruiz said. Why do you say I am the chosen one? Charlotte didn't want to talk about anything about Dad anymore. He should be able to rest in peace. Going straight to the point so soon? Queijo Ruiz said, but you have to remember, if I tell you this, you'll have to meet your fate. His words made Charlotte hesitate. The price of getting an answer was death. No matter who made such a decision, it wouldn't be easy. You keep saying that you're not afraid of death, but you're still afraid, right? Queijo Ruiz's voice had a hint of ridicule. Of course I'm afraid of death. Xia Lei smiled bitterly. I still want to live with my woman and children for a few more years. I want to watch them grow old, and I want to watch my children marry and have children. However, I can take it up and let it go. People will have that day sooner or later. If I could choose, I'd rather none of this happened. But I don't have a choice. Since I'm the chosen one, then all of this is destined. Come on, tell me. Did Xia Changhe give you that compass? Charlotte nodded. There were actually 2 compasses in his backpack. One was the compass that he had repaired to find the last fragment of the box, and the other was the compass that his father gave him to find the chosen one. That compass had also given his father a hint, which was why there were those stories that happened in Jerusalem. However, he didn't plan to take out the compass. This story is very long. Queijo Ruiz said. Charlotte waited quietly. The box in your hand was first discovered by me, and I obtained it. Queijo Ruiz continued, but before I discovered the box, I first obtained the compass that your father gave you. Without that compass, I wouldn't have been able to obtain the box. Where did you get the compass? Of course not with you. Queijo Ruiz said. Didn't I leave some things for you? The bronze grimoire, iron book, not everything inside is fake, there are also some real things. Everything about the box is real, but I only mentioned it briefly and didn't go into details. Now I can tell you the truth. In my era, I was just an ordinary person. I had many beautiful dreams, but I couldn't realize them because I was very poor. Queijo Ruiz's voice suddenly made Charlotte vigilant. He wouldn't be so kind as to tell me his story. He's just a body of energy without emotions. Whatever he does, he only considers one thing, and that is his own benefit. He dragged such a simple question so far. Could it be that he's trying to stall for time? While Queijo Ruiz was talking endlessly, Charlotte's gaze suddenly shifted away from Queijo Ruiz. Chapter 13:10. The 8 energy columns were radiating light. Although there was no energy field, they were still working. Otherwise, they wouldn't have glowed. The reason was simple, because they were never lamped. The energy columns were working, but Queijo Ruiz was telling a story. Was this normal? Charlotte's heart was full of doubts, but there were no signs of abnormalities here, and Queijo Ruiz didn't show any signs of attacking him. But even if he suspected that Queijo Ruiz had a conspiracy, he had no other choice but to remain vigilant. This was his sorrow. He felt like a fish in a fisherman's net. Cashew continued to tell his story. One day, the sky suddenly turned dark and nothing could be seen. The sea turned into monstrous waves, flash floods, and earthquakes. The scene was like the end of the world. The second day after the sky lost light, there was a violent explosion in the sky. You can't imagine the power of the explosion. Many forests were flattened by the shock wave of the explosion. After the explosion, a lot of fireballs fell from the sky. Some were metal fragments and some were things that had never been seen before. I was very lucky. I picked up the compass. Hearing this, Charlotte couldn't help but interrupt Cashew. What exploded? Cashew shook his head. You may not believe it, but I really don't know. Then how did you know what to look for with the compass? Charlotte had to admit that he had been attracted by Cashew's story. Cashew said, "At first, of course I didn't know. I had never seen such a thing. The era I was born in was the era of cold weapons, similar to the ancient times here. You can't expect an ancient person like me to understand these things. Soon after I got the compass, its pointer moved, and I was curious about where it was going to take me. I followed the compass's directions, climbed mountains, crossed rivers. Finally, I found the box." Charlotte couldn't help but ask, "Is it complete?" Cashew said, "No, it's missing a horn." Charlotte's heart was suddenly surprised. Even Cashew didn't see the last fragment. Where was the last fragment? This was a mystery. Cashew said, "Initially, I suspected that the last fragment was on our planet. However, the needle of the compass was pointing towards the sky. I've tried everything, but I can't get into the sky." Charlotte thought to himself, both compasses are pointing to the sky? Could it be that the one in Isotab is just an imitation? Cashew continued, "I got the incomplete box, but I don't know what it's used for. I don't know who made it or where it came from. But I got something from the box, some sparkling mineral powder." Charlotte felt inexplicably nervous. Cashew laughed. "I think you already know what it is, right?" "A capsule," Charlotte said. Cashew said, "It's not a capsule. It's really a mineral powder that contains magical energy." "Mineral powder?" Charlotte's gaze moved to the huge rock that looked like black jade under his feet. This rock also contained magical energy. Where did these rocks come from? His heart was filled with endless imagination. Cashew said, "You got something. You don't know what it is, but it looks so magical. Can you resist your curiosity? Can you resist the temptation? But in my time, I didn't have the research equipment you have. I could only use my tongue. In our tribe, if we want to get someone's power, we usually eat them." "Charlotte," Cashew said, "I ate a little, just a little. I didn't feel anything. It didn't even have a taste. But I was still very careful. I didn't eat it all at once. I ate a little every few days. In total, I ate it for about 2 months. But I didn't become stronger because of it. Until one day, our tribe's enemies attacked and I was stabbed. I was lucky to survive. After that injury, I found that my body began to change." Charlotte didn't need to imagine his situation because Cashew's situation was almost the same as his. It was just that the way to stimulate the energy lurking in the body was different. Cashew said, "I gained great power. My life changed from then on. I killed our chief and ate his heart in front of our people. I became the new chief of our tribe. Those who looked down on me and bullied me in the past, I didn't let any of them go. I killed them all. After I integrated the power of the army, I began to conquer other tribes. In every battle, I rushed to the front, and I was invincible. My body evolved every day, and I became stronger and stronger. My desire to conquer the world also became stronger. I couldn't stop my footsteps, and the territory of my empire continued to expand. At my peak, I had millions of troops. Everywhere I went, blood flowed like a river. The woman I liked, whether she had a man or not, had to sleep with me. The thing I liked, no matter who its owner was, had to give it to me. Were you happy? Queijo Ruiz said, I wasn't happy at all. In the beginning, I just became stronger and stronger. My fists are like the bombs in your world, and I can blow up a cow with just one punch. In the end, I could even blow up the city gate. Charlotte's mind suddenly flashed with a question that he had thought about before. Could it be that different races ate that mineral powder and got different abilities? Queijo Ruiz said, but as my body evolved, my body became more and more transparent, and I became cold and ruthless. Even if it was my wife or my child, if they angered me, I would blow them up with a punch. Also, I lost interest in food. Whatever I ate had no taste. At first, I just hated the food. Later, I would vomit a little bit of food, and it was uncomfortable for a few days. I thought I was going to die. I wanted to unlock the secret of the box and find the answer before I died. Charlotte sneered. You actually wanted to find the reason, solve the problem, and then continue being a tyrant, right? Queijo Ruiz did not care about Charlotte's ridicule. He continued, what happened next was mentioned in the bronze grimoire. I brought that compass and traveled thousands of miles, searching for the things that fell to the ground after the explosion. When I was conquering the world, I didn't touch that compass at all. I started my journey with it, and during the journey I received its instructions. Sometimes it was a voice that I couldn't understand, and sometimes it was a dream. But no matter what it was, I was sure that it was giving me instructions. What did you find? Didn't you see everything? Queijo Ruiz's voice had a hint of pride. Stones, one stone after another. Charlotte was stunned for a moment. You mean this city? Yes and no. What do you mean? What you saw was a city, but what I found at first was just one stone after another. Queijo Ruiz seemed to be recalling something. According to the compass's instructions, I piled up the stones I found one by one, and slowly built this city. Did you want to build it like this, or did the box make you build it like this? Of course it was the box. Queijo Ruiz said. Everything here was built according to its instructions. The placement of each stone, the position of each stone, was completely handled according to its instructions. Do you know? In order to complete its instructions, I spent more than 10,000 years just to collect these stones. A person spent more than 10,000 years to collect stones. What kind of persistence was that? In the process of collecting stones, my body completely disappeared, and I became like this. Queijo Ruiz said. To build this stone city, I spent more than 10,000 years. You may think that I'm crazy and very boring, but I want to tell you that that period of time was the most fulfilling and interesting time that I've ever spent. Queijo Ruiz said. After this city was built, I gave it a name. It's called Sky City. Rang Hisashi had a famous light music with this name, but now it seemed that Queijo Ruiz owned the copyright of this name. After this city was built, I received new instructions. Queijo Ruiz pointed to an energy bar on his side. I found them again. When I found them, they had lost most of their energy and were dim. I brought them one by one into this city. After entering this city, they began to replenish their energy, but the process was very slow. Charlotte's gaze moved to an energy column. Suddenly, he seemed to understand something, and the uneasy feeling from before emerged again. These energy columns had actually been replenishing energy. It was a very long wait. Queijo Ruiz said. 10,000 years after 10,000 years, I don't know how many tens of thousands of years I waited. My world was destroyed, but I'm still alive. My world gave birth to new life and began a new journey of evolution. A new civilization was also being built bit by bit. Charlotte thought of Isotab. She was Queijo Ruiz's later generation. The new life that Queijo Ruiz was talking about was obviously Isotab. The new civilization was also the civilization that was later established in that world. I have no interest in those people and their civilization at all. I've seen the destruction of too many races, and I've seen the destruction of too many civilizations. I've become numb to those things. However, while waiting for the energy to be refined and charged, the compass gave me a lot of instructions. It allowed me to intervene in the evolution of the later generations. Some technology was transmitted to my head through the compass, and then I injected it into the civilization of the later generations. The civilization of the later generations became stronger and stronger. The dead could be cloned, and the human body could enter advanced evolution through drugs. In the end, everything went out of control. Charlotte's heart was shocked. He did not know why, but he believed the story that Kasia Ruiz told him. Previously, he thought that Kasia Ruiz had learned the technology to create human clones through isotab. Now, it seemed that the headquarters was not like that. Instead, the compass had used Kasia Ruiz's method of preserving seedlings to create the civilization of the later generations of the world. Standing in the CPU of this mysterious sky city, it was as if the story that happened in the distant extraterrestrial, in the distant era, was happening right before his eyes. For this sky city, tens of thousands of years, or even millions of years, was just a snap of the fingers. Chapter 13:11. Kasia Ruiz sighed. That world became crazier and crazier, and it finally went out of control. The war that destroyed the world broke out, and the people killed each other, one city after another. During that time, I found that the time it took for the energy column to recharge was getting faster and faster. The war broke out, and the time it took for the energy column to recharge was getting faster and faster? Charlotte couldn't help but think in his heart, is the war related to the time it takes for the energy column to recharge? He couldn't imagine it. The war that happened in the distant world was strange and distant to him. One day, I received a new hint, and that was to find the chosen person. After that, the energy column finished recharging. I also saw the greatness of the sky city with my own eyes. It rose from the ground and flew into the sky. Kasia Ruiz raised his arms. And I am the master of this city, I am in it. So, it brought you to this world? Charlotte's brain couldn't help but imagine the scene of the city flying under his feet, but no matter how he imagined it, the scene he imagined was very strange. Yes, it brought me to this world, and then found you. What about Isotab? Charlotte asked. How did she come to this world? You have to ask her about her, Kasia Ruiz said. Charlotte didn't ask again. The scene of the flying sky city in his mind disappeared, and it was replaced by a disc-shaped black spaceship. In that spaceship, the sudden appearance of light and the arm that reached out from behind the light screen changed the life of that girl. That girl was Isotab. He had stolen this memory from Isotab's brain when he invaded her body. Although this wasn't a complete answer, at least it could be said that Isotab didn't come to this world with the prehistoric one. She took the same mineral powder that Kasia Ruiz took, so she evolved to the same height as Kasia Ruiz. Isotab's story was another story. Charlotte's heart was filled with bitterness. He knew very well that he no longer had the chance to explore the story of Isotabu. I already know your story, but you still haven't told me my original question, Charlotte said. That is, why me? Why am I the chosen one? Kasia Ruiz said, it was that compass that found you. It gave me a hint. What hint? Charlotte was eager to know the answer. Kasia Ruiz said, you are the chosen one, the only one who can enter the box world. Charlotte's heart skipped a beat. Why did you enter the box world? Kasia Ruiz said, it didn't give me any instructions, but I guess the last piece of the box isn't somewhere in the starry sky, but in the world of the box. It's looking for someone who can bring it out. Is that your guess? Yes, that's my guess. In my long life, this is the question I have thought about the most. Kasia Ruiz said, it found you, and you are indeed different. When I evolved to your level, my body was almost invisible, but you still have such a perfect body. Charlotte said, since you guessed it, why didn't you go in? Kasia Ruiz laughed. Are you kidding? Anyone who came into contact with that box would eventually die. I once did an experiment. I threw a lot of people in, but no one came out alive. Only ashes came out. I also threw some energy substances in, but the energy substances completely disappeared. You said that anyone who touches that box will eventually die, but why are you fine? Charlotte was just thinking about this question. Kasia Ruiz laughed. It has to leave someone to do something, right? You're not afraid of the box world at all, so why are you pretending to be afraid of it? Kasia Ruiz said, I'm waiting for time. It's about time. The sense of crisis in Charlotte's heart became stronger. Kasia Ruiz sneered. You've asked me more than once what I want from you. Now I can tell you, what I want is you. What do you mean? Kasia Ruiz said, in my thinking, everything that happened was because of that big explosion. If it wasn't for that big explosion, I wouldn't be who I am today. I want to unlock the secret of the box. It must hide the most important secret of this universe. If I do it, I will live with greater power. Maybe I can travel freely in this universe and conquer higher civilizations. I can even dominate everything, and I mean everything. Human desires were like this. Sometimes they could be so big that even the universe couldn't contain them. Charlotte said, You're just dreaming. You said you want me. Do you think I will help you satisfy your perverted ambition and desire? Ha ha ha. Kasia Ruiz laughed. What are you laughing at? I'm laughing at your naivety. Kasia Ruiz's voice suddenly turned cold. I want you, but I don't mean that I want you to do things for me. I want your body, I want your energy, I want everything of you. I want to become you, enter the box world, get the last fragment, complete the box, and then start a new life. This was Kasia Ruiz's purpose. Charlotte had been looking for this answer. Now that he got it, his heart didn't feel relaxed after the knot in his heart was unraveled. Kasia Ruiz wanted to occupy his body, wanted to become him, and then enter the world in the box to complete the mission that should have been completed by him. He wanted to obtain greater power through the box to realize his almost sick dream. Now, Kasia Ruiz was only one step away from the final step. Would it be success after one step? Perhaps even Kasia Ruiz didn't know this, but it still couldn't stop his ambition and desire. No one could resist the mysterious world in the box, and no one could resist the gifts that it brought to people, such as a long life, great power, incredible special abilities, and so on. Kasia Ruiz was obviously deep in it, and he couldn't get out. It was said that power was a kind of poison. Once you got addicted, you couldn't get out. However, power was also a kind of poison, and it was a more ferocious poison than power. Once you got addicted, it would be difficult to get out of it. In fact, it wasn't just Kasia Ruiz. Charlotte himself had a deep understanding of this. Along the way, how could he not be obsessed with its power and ability? If he didn't have great power and ability, how could he create Rema Group, and how could he win the hearts of so many women? If he didn't have great power and ability, he was afraid that he would still be moving bricks on the construction site, living a hard life. It was the same for Isatab. Although he didn't know her story, her pursuit of power was almost perverted. She didn't even hesitate to destroy the world to achieve her goal. After knowing the truth from Kasia Ruiz's mouth, and recalling the battle that happened in Incheon, Korea and Shangri-La, how could she not want to replace him and do what Kasia Ruiz wanted to do? The truth was right in front of him. Charlotte's heart also had a ridiculous feeling. He was Tang Seng, and all the demons and ghosts wanted to eat him. After a short silence, Charlotte said aloud, Kasia Ruiz, don't you know that even if you eat me, you can't become the real me? You can at most turn me into your clothes, just like what Isatab made for my two friends. But for him, he can't become the person he wants to be. Clothes are clothes. No matter how well-fitting clothes are, they are still clothes. Have you forgotten? Kasia Ruiz said, the technology of that world was imported by me. What Isotab knows, I know. What I know, Isotab doesn't know. For the arrival of this day, I have planned for so long. Every detail, every step, I have calculated countless times. I have waited for this day to come for too long. Now that all the conditions are ripe, I am going to realize my dream. If you want to eat me and occupy my body, you can eat me when I am weak and then occupy my body, but why did you wait until today? You even gave me a time limit of 3 years. Why? Kasia Ruiz said, the first reason is that if your body hasn't started to fully evolve, it would be useless for me to come. The second reason is right in front of you, in the center of this city. What does this have to do with it? Kasia Ruiz said, the Sky City flew to this world and exhausted all its energy. These 8 energy pillars need to be replenished. This is a very long time. I can't remember how many tens of thousands of years it took for them to replenish their energy today. This is also the reason why I gave you a 3-year deadline. The deadline I set for you was calculated by me repeatedly. The time for these 8 energy pillars to be fully charged is today. I estimated that it would take 2 more days. Those 2 days were the time I used to catch you. Since you came to me today, I have saved 2 days of time to catch you. We can start soon. The stone under your feet contains a very magical energy. It will only be released after the 8 energy pillars are fully charged. At that time, you will witness a miracle. What miracle? Charlotte's heart was already nervous to the extreme. I can't describe its existence to you in words, but you will see it with your own eyes soon, so there is no need to ask me at all, Kasia Ruiz said. A decisive sneer appeared at the corner of Charlotte's mouth. He took out the box of the world. You are a very smart and cunning person. I admit that you have calculated everything, but we have a very good saying. That is, there is always a loophole in every plan. No one can make any plan perfect. I love that you have missed a very important place. What did I miss? I can enter the world of the box now, and you will get nothing. If you find the last fragment of the box, you can get some powerful power, or even unlock the most important secret of the universe. That can only be me. Charlotte shouted at Kasia Ruiz, not a dirty mouse like you. Ha ha. Kasia Ruiz laughed. Sometimes you are really funny. I thought you would say something that would surprise me. I didn't expect you to say this. Let me tell you, once these 8 energy pillars are fully charged, you can't go anywhere. Charlotte suddenly inserted the middle finger of his left hand into the gap of the box of the world. From the world that he was born in to another world, it was like his women and children, his family and his career, everything. This was not a decision that could be made in an instant. No matter how well prepared Charlotte was mentally, when he inserted his finger into the gap of the box of the world, he inevitably hesitated for a moment. It was during this moment of hesitation that an energy field with explosive properties came crashing over. It was Kasia Ruiz's fist. Only one fist. Isotab had the habit of condensing her own energy into a sharp spear, but Kasia Ruiz's habit was obviously different. A fist, an incomparably huge fist. By the time Xia Lei saw it, the fist had already arrived in front of him. Its volume was almost as big as his body. Chapter 13:12. Boom. Charlotte's body was sent flying by the huge energy fist. The moment the fist hit his body, Charlotte felt as if his internal organs were about to shatter, and the pain almost suffocated him. However, this was just a prelude. Rumble. A violent explosion sounded, and it felt like a cannon shell had exploded. There was no smoke, but Charlotte saw a burst of fire and energy that could only be produced by an explosion. Before he had time to recover from the first physical attack, the energy attack had already affected his body. Kaboom! The silver armor made an ear-piercing sound, and the huge impact also swept Charlotte, pushing him into a stone wall like a cannonball. There was another violent impact and shock, and Charlotte opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, then fell to the ground. However, there was not even a scratch on the stone wall behind him. The moment his back hit the stone wall glowed with a cold blue light, like a protective film, protecting the stone wall that was hit. This stone city could fly from outer space to Earth, and even drill into the ground. If such a place could have a scratch from a collision, then it would really be an incredible thing. However, no matter how strong the attack was, Charlotte's right hand tightly held onto the box, and his left hand also tightly held onto the crystal skull, not letting them fall. The moment he fell to the ground, what he did was not to attack Cacharuiz, but to stretch his fingers towards the box of the world. Although it was very difficult to make that decision, he still had to make it. Just from this exchange, he found that he was not Cacharuiz's opponent at all. The comparison of his strength with Cacharuiz could be completely compared using age. His opponent was an existence that had lived for millions of years, and how old was he? His age was not even enough for Cacharuiz to take a nap. If he could not win, then he would run. This was already Charlotte's only choice. He could not hesitate any longer. If he hesitated for even a second, he might fall into an irrecoverable situation. However, just as he was about to insert his right thumb into the gap of the box of the world, a buzzing sound was heard in the space. The black jade-like ground trembled. Darkness returned. A boundless gravitational force appeared, sweeping over like a tsunami. The world box in Charlotte's right hand flew towards the center of the black jade ground. The crystal skull reacted almost at the same instant the gravity was generated. A pure white light burst out and enveloped Charlotte. Everything happened in the span of a second. It was so fast that no one could react. However, Charlotte still survived. But at this time, worrying about being killed was actually unnecessary. Because Cacharuiz had planned all of this, he would never kill him before his plot succeeded. Sure enough, the gravitational force disappeared before it reached Charlotte's body. It came like a landslide and a tsunami, but when it left, it was like a receding tide. It gave people the feeling that it had never appeared, that the moment of darkness was just an illusion. Cacharuiz appeared again, but he did not attack Charlotte again. He stood on the huge black jade-like rock and looked at Charlotte. The corner of his mouth had a hint of a sneer. I said, I planned everything. Did you think I didn't think about this? I thought about it long ago. Your plan was childish and ridiculous. Do you still have any ideas now? Charlotte struggled to get up from the ground. He did not speak. He reached out his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Just the movement of getting up made his bones feel like they were about to crack. The power of the brand was healing his injuries, but nothing could heal the pain in his heart. Facing an enemy more terrifying than Sitab, he could not defeat him. Other than accepting his fate, what choice did he have? This was the source of his sorrow. At this moment, the black jade-like rock under his feet trembled slightly. The blue energy contained in the rock was clearly agitated. It swam quickly inside the rock, darting left and right, as if trying to find an opening to escape. The box of the world attached to the center of the black jade-like rock also trembled slightly. In this space, there was a constant buzzing sound, but it was impossible to see what was making the sound. Ha ha ha! Cacharuiz laughed out loud. His posture seemed to be releasing the desire that had been suppressed for millions of years through laughter. His voice also echoed in this space. The great moment is finally coming. It's coming. Hua! The black jade-like rock made a sound like flowing mercury. At that moment, blue energy emerged from the surroundings of the box of the world. At first it was a little bit, then more and more. At the beginning, it was like a seed that was buried in the ground germinated, emerged from the soil and began to grow. As the blue energy grew higher and higher, it gradually surrounded the box of the world. However, the blue energy did not stop. It continued to grow upwards like a tree. Moreover, after completely surrounding the box of the world, the speed at which the black jade-like rock released the blue energy became faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, the column formed by the blue energy reached the top of the CPU building. But just when Charlotte thought it was going to rush out and soar into the sky, it actually stopped growing upwards and began to sprout branches. It was actually a tree. The blue energy tree. It took root in the CPU of this city and surrounded the box of the world. This was what Charlotte saw, but he could not believe his eyes. Cassia Ruiz finally stopped laughing like a lunatic. He looked at Xiaolei. "This is a miracle, isn't it?" Charlotte did not seem to hear his voice. He was completely shocked by the blue energy tree in front of him. The spectacle in front of him even made him forget the pain in his body, and made him forget to think. The miracle continued. Roots grew out of the branches of the blue energy tree. The roots hung down from the branches and extended in all directions along the black jade-like rock ground. Those roots penetrated the rock wall of the CPU, and continued to spread throughout the city. The whole city seemed to have come alive. Every piece of rock was alive, and every piece of rock had a very mysterious story. Then the whole city trembled slightly, giving people the feeling that it was the vibration caused by the engine before a spaceship took off. A blue energy root suddenly pierced over. Charlotte did not notice its arrival at all. By the time he realized it, the blue root had already penetrated his body. He did not feel anything, as if the blue energy root that penetrated his body did not exist. Boom! Countless blue energy tendrils suddenly pierced towards Xiaolei from all directions. Charlotte could not dodge at all, because even if he turned into a bird, he could not fly out of the encirclement formed by thousands of energy roots. Countless blue energy roots penetrated Charlotte's body in an instant. One after another, they could not be counted. From his head to his feet, almost every pore had one. Charlotte's body could not move, and then it was his thinking. His thinking was slowed down to a very slow level. And this slowness was still continuing, which made his brain more and more dizzy. Ha ha ha! Cassia Ruiz laughed again. He was very happy today. I have a secret that I did not tell you. Only the existence of a free energy body can move when the Sky City is awakened. Non-energy bodies will be imprisoned. The Sky City will regard you as a virus. In a human body, the virus will first be wrapped and then killed. Charlotte wanted to speak, but he could not open his mouth. Those blue energy roots completely imprisoned his body. In the past, at this time, his branding power would have been activated to help him solve the problem, but this time, his branding power was also imprisoned, and he could not move. Comparing the branding power in his body with the energy of the Sky City, it was undoubtedly a firefly competing with the bright moon. I am about to be eaten by him. At this time, the faces of his women and children appeared in Charlotte's mind. His heart was filled with sadness and pain. He wanted to cry, but even his tear ducts were imprisoned. Cassia Ruiz walked towards Charlotte, and his voice was very cold. It took me countless moments to master the characteristics of this energy. Let me tell you another secret. I can enter your body through them, and then destroy your soul from the inside bit by bit. Then, I will enter the original universe imprint. You said that I can't completely become you. Let me tell you, I don't want to become you, but I want you to become me. Your body, your universe imprint are all mine. I will have everything except your soul. The universe imprint he mentioned, Charlotte originally understood it to be a universe imprint. Although the name was different, it could refer to the same thing. Charlotte, this is how I will eat you. This should be the most advanced way of eating. You should feel honored. Your soul will be destroyed, but your body will still exist. Your body will accompany me to conquer one civilization after another. You should be even more happy. Ah. Queijo Ruiz laughed again. The corner of Charlotte's eyes shifted to the crystal skull in his left hand. His only hope was the crystal skull. However, until now there was no reaction from the crystal skull. After all, it was not a conscious thing. The blue energy was almost non-aggressive, and the blue energy roots were as natural and pure as sunlight and moonlight. This kind of imprisonment was effective on him, who had a body, but it had no effect on the energy, so it would not respond at all. Queijo Ruiz's plan really had no loopholes. The so-called 1 out of 100 secrets would not appear on him. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.